The last thing my father ever gave me was a red envelope. Not money, not an apology, just a sealed crimson envelope with strict instructions not to open it until after the official will reading. I carried it in my purse for 3 weeks after his funeral, feeling its weight like a loaded gun against my hip. My name is Lauren, and I hadn't set foot in my childhood home for 7 years until today. The mansion's marble foyer still gleamed like polished ice, and family portraits lined the walls, though I noticed mine had been removed years ago. Typical Samantha. Well, well, look who finally showed up. My stepmother's voice dripped with fake sweetness as she descended the grand staircase. She hadn't aged a day, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her designer dress probably worth more than my car. We weren't sure you'd bother, given how you abandoned your poor father. I kept my face neutral. Hello, Samantha. Behind her, my step-siblings appeared like matching bookends. Jasmine, examining her manicure as if it held the secrets of the universe, and Cooper, smirking like he'd just won the lottery. Maybe he thought he had. The prodigal daughter returns, Cooper sneered. Hoping Daddy left you a consolation prize? Mr. Murphy is waiting in the study, I replied, ignoring the bait. Shall we? Gene Murphy, my father's lawyer for 30 years, stood as we entered. His kind eyes met mine with something that looked suspiciously like sympathy. That's when I knew for certain. The official will would be exactly what Samantha wanted. Please, everyone be seated, Gene began, adjusting his reading glasses. We're here to execute the last will and testament of Philip James Dawson. I tuned out the legal jargon, watching Samantha's face instead. The slight upturn of her lips, the predatory gleam in her eyes. She'd won, and she knew it. The estate, including all properties, investments, and controlling interest in Dawson Holdings, is to be divided as follows, Jean continued. To my wife, Samantha Harper Dawson, 60% of all assets. To my stepchildren, Jasmine and Cooper Harper, 19% each. Jasmine actually clapped her hands together in delight. And to my daughter, Lauren, Jean paused, looking uncomfortable. 2% of liquid assets, approximately $50,000. Just like you are, nothing, Jasmine whispered, loudly enough for everyone to hear. I reached into my purse and withdrew the red envelope. Mr. Murphy, I believe my father left additional instructions to be read after the primary will. The room went silent. Samantha's perfect smile cracked just slightly. What is that? She demanded. A codicil, Jean replied, reaching for the envelope. Properly notarized and witnessed 3 days before Philip's death. This is ridiculous. Samantha stood up, her voice rising. We weren't informed of any additional documents. This is clearly a desperate attempt to... To what, Samantha? I met her eyes. To tell the truth? The envelope is legitimate, Jean confirmed, examining the seals. And, as executor of the estate, I am legally bound to read its contents. This is bullshit, Cooper spat. Dad was barely conscious his last week. Anything he signed then was recorded on video, Jean interrupted, with witnesses present, including myself and a medical professional who confirmed his mental competency. I watched the colour drain from Samantha's face as Jean broke the seal. 7 years of waiting, of wondering if I'd imagined the look in my father's eyes when he'd pressed this envelope into my hands. His last words to me, "Wait for the right moment, Lauren. Everything has its time." This is outrageous. Samantha was practically vibrating with rage. I demand... You're in no position to demand anything, Jean said firmly, removing several pages from the envelope. Not until we determine the full scope of Philip's final wishes. The room fell silent again as Jean began to read. I, Philip James Dawson, being of sound mind, do hereby declare this to be a codicil to my last will and testament. To my daughter Lauren, I leave the truth, and with it, the power to restore what was stolen. Samantha sank back into her chair, and I saw something I'd waited 7 years to see. Fear in her eyes. The right moment had finally arrived. Jean's voice filled the study as he read my father's final words. Every sentence felt like another crack in Samantha's perfect facade. My dearest Lauren, if you're hearing this, then the official will reading has concluded exactly as expected, with a lie. A lie I helped maintain for the past 7 years to protect you, and to prepare for this moment. Jasmine tried to interrupt, but Jean silenced her with a raised hand. I was a coward, Lauren. I allowed Samantha to systematically destroy our relationship through manipulation, gaslighting, and eventually threats. What began as subtle suggestions about your unstable behavior evolved into complete isolation. But I never stopped watching, and I never stopped planning. I glanced at Samantha. Her perfectly manicured nails were digging into the leather armchair. 3 years ago, Jean continued reading, I created a separate trust under a holding company named Second Chances LLC. Into this trust, I transferred 70% of my true wealth, including majority ownership of our overseas operations and real estate holdings. The official will your stepmother helped draft covered only our domestic assets, approximately 30% of the total estate. That's impossible. Samantha shot to her feet. I saw all the accounts, every statement. Did you? I asked quietly. Or did you see what he wanted you to see? Jean pulled out another document. I have here the trust documents naming Lauren as sole trustee and beneficiary of Second Chances LLC, effective immediately upon Philip's death. Cooper started laughing nervously. This is a joke, right? Dad wouldn't... Additionally, Jean pressed on, I've arranged for a forensic accounting team to review all financial transactions from the past decade. Lauren has full authority to initiate any investigations she deems necessary. The blood drained from Cooper's face. Interesting. Mr. Murphy. Samantha's voice turned sickly sweet. Surely you understand this mysterious trust invalidates the official will. We'll have to contest... Actually, a new voice joined the conversation. I turned to see Thomas Reed, my father's international counsel, standing in the doorway. The trust was established in a separate jurisdiction, completely legal and ironclad. I should know. I helped create it. The final portion of the letter is personal, Jean said, handing me the remaining pages. Lauren, would you like to read it privately? No, I replied, meeting Samantha's eyes. I'll read it here. My hands didn't shake as I read my father's last words. Lauren, I know this doesn't make up for the years we lost. I know you suffered because of my weakness, but I hope this gives you the power to uncover the truth about what really happened the night you left. Samantha's composure cracked. Don't you dare! The night, I continued, my voice growing stronger, when Samantha threatened to have you committed if you didn't leave voluntarily. I found the recording, Lauren, the one you made on your phone that night, the one that mysteriously disappeared along with other evidence of her manipulation. You bitch! Jasmine hissed at me. You're making this up. The recording has been recovered, Thomas interjected, along with extensive documentation of financial irregularities that occurred after Lauren's departure. I folded the letter carefully. Dad's final gift wasn't money or property. It was the truth, and the power to do something about it. This is absurd, Samantha stood, gathering her designer purse. Come on, kids. Our lawyers will handle this nonsense. Oh, please call them. I smiled for the first time. I'm sure they'd love to explain why they failed to discover a massive international trust. Or maybe they can explain the offshore accounts you've been funneling money into? Cooper went pale. Mum? Don't say another word, Samantha snapped at him. Lauren, if you think you can waltz back in here and destroy this family... You destroyed this family long ago, I cut her off. I'm just here to restore it, starting with a complete audit of every account, every transaction, every decision made since you married my father. You can't... I can. I will. And I already have. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. The forensic accountants started their work this morning. They're particularly interested in some recent cryptocurrency transactions. Isn't that right, Cooper? Cooper looked like he might faint. Mr. Murphy? Mr. Reed? I nodded to both lawyers. I believe we're finished here. Please ensure all accounts are frozen pending investigation. As I walked toward the door, Samantha grabbed my arm. You have no idea what you're doing. I looked down at her hand, then back to her face. Actually, I do. I'm doing exactly what you taught me, taking everything from someone who deserves to lose it all. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click, but not before I heard Samantha's scream of rage. 7 years of waiting, planning, and preparing had led to this moment. And it was only the beginning. Look at this, Rose said, spreading documents across my kitchen table. My best friend had spent the last 3 days helping me dig through years of financial records. The pattern is clear. Every time your father tried to reconcile with you, there was a large transfer of funds to this offshore account. I picked up one of the bank statements. Blackmail money? More like insurance, Rose replied, pulling up something on her laptop. She'd drain a little more each time Philip showed signs of reaching out to you, like this email from 4 years ago. The message appeared innocent enough. Darling, I'm worried about Lauren. Perhaps we should try to contact her. My father's words made my chest ache. Samantha's reply was perfectly crafted manipulation. Sweetheart, remember what the doctor said about enabling her behaviour? Besides, I've heard disturbing rumours about her mental state. It's best to keep our distance. God, I can practically hear her voice, I muttered. Show me the corresponding transaction. Rose pulled up another document. 2 days after this exchange, $500,000 disappeared into an account in the Cayman Islands. A knock at my door made us both jump. It was Jean, carrying a heavy cardboard box. Your father wanted you to have this, he said, setting it down. He kept it in his private safe at the office. Not even Samantha knew about it. Inside the box, I found a laptop, files, and an envelope containing a USB drive. My hands trembled as I plugged it into Rose's computer. My father's face filled the screen. He looked tired, aged beyond his years, but his eyes were clear. Lauren, if you're watching this, I finally found the courage to do what I should have done years ago. I've been gathering evidence, bank records, emails, recorded conversations, everything that proves what Samantha did to us. Rose squeezed my hand as the video continued. That night you left, she didn't just threaten to have you committed. She threatened your life. Said she knew people who could make accidents happen. I was a coward. I chose to let you go rather than fight her. But I never stopped watching, never stopped collecting evidence. Jesus, Rose whispered. Oh, say. The laptop contains everything, my father continued, including proof that Cooper has been embezzling company funds for crypto schemes. Samantha knows about it. She's been using it to control him, just like she controls everyone. But he made mistakes. Big ones. The kind that interest federal investigators. Jean cleared his throat. Lauren, there's something else you should know. Dominic Burke, your father's former business partner, has been in contact. He says he has emails from Samantha that you need to see. Dominic? I hadn't heard that name in years. I thought he and Dad had a falling out. Orchestrated by Samantha, Jean replied. She saw him as a threat because he was asking too many questions about the company's finances. I turned back to the video as my father's voice grew stronger. Lauren, I know you're angry with me. You have every right to be. But please understand, everything I've done since that night has been to prepare for this moment, to give you the weapons you need to fight back. The screen went dark, but his words echoed in my head. Look at this, Rose suddenly said, pointing at her screen. Cooper's crypto transactions. He wasn't just embezzling, he was laundering money, lots of it. I leaned in closer. Can you trace where it went? Better, she grinned. I can prove he knew exactly what he was doing. These messages to his crypto broker, he was bragging about it. Make copies of everything, I told her. Jean, can you set up a meeting with Dominic? He nodded. He's already asked to meet. Tomorrow at noon, his office. I started gathering the documents, my mind racing. Rose, keep digging into Cooper's transactions. If he was laundering money, then Samantha had to know about it, she finished. Want me to send an anonymous tip to the SEC? Not yet, I replied. First, I want to talk to Cooper. Give him a chance to do the right thing. You think he will? Jean asked skeptically. I thought about the fear in Cooper's eyes during the will reading. I think he's the weak link. Samantha's been controlling him through guilt and fear, just like she did with Dad. But Cooper's young, scared, and facing serious federal charges. If we approach him right, he'll flip on his mother, Rose nodded approvingly. I picked up my father's letter again, running my fingers over his signature. Samantha thought she buried all her secrets, but she forgot one thing. My father was watching. All those years, every scheme, every manipulation, every threat. He was documenting everything. And now? Rose asked. I smiled grimly. Now it's time to use it. Cooper first, then Dominic's evidence, and finally, I looked at the stack of offshore account records. Finally, we follow the money. All of it. The pieces were falling into place. Tomorrow I'd give Cooper a choice. Help me expose the truth, or go down with his mother's sinking ship. Either way, Samantha's carefully constructed world was about to crumble. Cooper was already waiting when I walked into the coffee shop, fidgeting with his Rolex, a 21st birthday gift from my father. His designer clothes couldn't hide the dark circles under his eyes or the way he kept glancing at the door. "No one followed me," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. "And yes, I came alone." "How did you find out about the crypto?" he blurted out, voice barely above a whisper. I placed a folder on the table. "Dad knew. He kept records of everything. The question is, Cooper, how much did Samantha know?" His face went through a series of emotions: fear, anger, desperation. "You don't understand. She made me do it. Said it was the only way to protect the family's interests." "Protect?" I laughed softly. "You laundered over $12 million through crypto exchanges. That's not protection. That's fraud." "She said Dad was hiding money from her," Cooper's voice cracked. "That we had to secure our future before he gave everything to you." I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Samantha's voice, cold and calculating, instructing Cooper on which accounts to target. His face crumpled. "The FBI would be very interested in this," I said quietly. Unless what?" Hope crept into his voice. "Unless you help me take her down. Legally, properly, with evidence and testimony." Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Rose. "Turn on the news now." I pulled up a live stream. Jasmine was standing outside the mansion, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face as she spoke to reporters. "My poor sister Lauren has always been troubled," she sobbed. "After our father's death, her mental state deteriorated. These wild accusations, these attempts to destroy our family. She needs help, not enablers." Cooper watched the screen, looking sick. "Mum put her up to this. She's trying to discredit you before..." "Before what, Cooper?" He swallowed hard. "Before the board meeting tomorrow. Mum's planning to challenge the trust, claim you're mentally unfit to manage the company." I smiled, which seemed to unnerve him more than anger would have. "Is that so?" My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jean. "All done. Accounts frozen, trading privileges suspended pending investigation." "What's happening?" Cooper asked, noticing my expression. "Right about now, Samantha should be discovering that all her access to company funds has been suspended. Same for you and Jasmine. Standard procedure when there's suspicion of financial misconduct. You can't..." "I can. I did. And in about 30 seconds... Cooper's phone started ringing. Samantha's face flashed on the screen. He stared at it, paralysed. "Your choice, Cooper. Answer it and go down with her, or help me end this." The phone kept ringing. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "She's my mother," he whispered. "And she used you to commit federal crimes," I replied. "The evidence is clear. The only question is whether you'll be a witness or a defendant." His phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. "Time's running out," I said softly. "The FBI already has an anonymous tip about the money laundering. They'll be investigating soon. Your mother will sacrifice you to save herself. You know that, right?" Cooper's hands were shaking. What do you need me to do?" I slid a document across the table. "Sign this affidavit. Tell the truth about the crypto transactions, the offshore accounts, everything. In return, I'll make sure the prosecutors know you cooperated fully. And Mom? Will face the consequences of her actions, just like she always promised would happen to me." The phone rang a third time. Cooper stared at it for a long moment, then declined the call. With trembling fingers, he picked up my pen. "She'll never forgive me," he murmured, signing his name. "Forgiveness isn't the point," I replied, taking the affidavit. "Justice is." My phone buzzed one final time. A message from Dominic. "Got what you need. Meeting still on for tomorrow?" I texted back a quick confirmation, then looked at Cooper. "Go home. Pack a bag. When this hits the news, you'll want to be far from Samantha." He stood up, looking lost. "Lauren, I'm sorry for everything. We were awful to you and Dad. Save it, I cut him off. Actions matter more than words. You've made a start today. That's something. As he walked away, my phone lit up with a news alert. Dawson Holdings under investigation. Allegations of massive financial fraud surface. I smiled, thinking of Samantha watching her empire begin to crumble. Tomorrow's meeting with Dominic would give me the final pieces I needed. The truth was coming out. One signature, one document, one revelation at a time. And Samantha's perfectly crafted world was falling apart right on schedule. Dominic's office hadn't changed in 7 years. Same leather chairs, same view of the city skyline, same determined set to his jaw. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. Your father came to me 3 months before he died, he said, pulling out a thick file. He knew Samantha was working with our competitors, but he couldn't prove it. Until now. He spread emails across his desk. Dozens of them, all from Samantha to executives at rival companies. She was selling company secrets, I asked, scanning the messages. Worse, Dominic replied. She was actively working to tank your father's legacy. These emails show her coordinating with Richardson Global to undermine major deals, leak confidential information, even manipulate stock prices. I picked up one particularly damning email. Samantha had outlined exactly how to force the company into near bankruptcy, all while collecting millions in kickbacks. Why didn't Dad expose this? Because of this, Dominic pulled up a video on his computer. The footage showed Samantha in this very office, speaking to someone off camera. If Philip ever discovers what we've done. Her voice was cold, calculated. Make sure Lauren has an accident. Nothing too obvious. A car crash, perhaps. Or a break-in gone wrong. My hands clenched into fists. When was this? 2 years ago. Your father found it a month before he died. That's when he accelerated his plans, created the trust, started moving assets. My phone buzzed. A news alert. I almost laughed when I read it. Looks like Cooper came through. I showed Dominic the headline. Breaking. Dawson Holdings executive provides evidence of widespread fraud. Your stepbrother grew a spine. More like self-preservation. The FBI is interviewing him now. I stood up, gathering the emails. These are copies? Dominic nodded. Originals are safe. I've also got recorded conversations, bank transfers, everything showing how she conspired with Richardson Global. Perfect timing, I smiled grimly. The board meets in 2 hours. I think they'll find this very interesting. Lauren? Dominic's voice stopped me at the door. There's something else. About the night you left. I remember everything about that night, I cut him off. But you don't know what happened after. Samantha came here to my office. She was celebrating. Said she'd finally gotten rid of the last obstacle to controlling your father completely. I recorded that conversation too. He handed me another USB drive. Your father never saw this one. I was saving it, waiting for the right moment. Back in my car, I plugged the drive into my laptop. Samantha's voice filled the space, slightly slurred from champagne but triumphant. It was almost too easy. The girl actually recorded me threatening her. Can you believe it? But phones are so fragile, aren't they? One little accident with a glass of water, and poof, all evidence gone. Now there's nothing standing between me and everything Philip owns. A male voice, presumably Dominic, asked, And if Lauren tries to come back? Samantha's laugh was chilling. Oh, I've taken care of that. I've got doctors ready to testify about her unstable mental state. One wrong move from her, and she'll spend the rest of her life in a padded room. The recording continued, detailing every manipulation, every calculated move. By the end, my hands had stopped shaking. The rage had crystallized into something cold and precise. My phone rang. Rose. You need to see this, she said without preamble. Jasmine just posted your private medical records online, from when you were in therapy after your mum died. Let me guess. Heavily edited to make me look unstable. Exactly. But here's the thing. The records have metadata showing they were accessed and modified recently, from Samantha's private computer. I smiled. Can you prove that? Already documented. Want me to send it to the medical board? This is a major HIPAA violation. Do it. And Rose, make sure the board members see it before the meeting. I started my car, heading toward Dawson Holdings headquarters. In my rearview mirror, I caught sight of a familiar black SUV. "Right on schedule," I murmured, watching Samantha's car following me. She thought she was being clever, tailing me to the board meeting. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Jean. "Everything's ready. Board members have copies of Cooper's testimony. Security is standing by." I typed back, "Perfect. And the reporters?" "Outside waiting, just as you requested." I pulled into the parking garage, Samantha's SUV still behind me. She thought she was heading to her triumph, exposing me as mentally unfit, taking final control of the company. Instead, she was driving straight into a trap 7 years in the making. Every piece was in place, every bit of evidence ready, every witness prepared. Time to end this. The boardroom fell silent as I walked in, Samantha close behind me. 12 pairs of eyes watched us take our seats at opposite ends of the massive oak table. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Now that we're all here," Samantha began, her voice dripping with false concern, "we need to discuss the company's leadership crisis, given recent events and Lauren's documented mental health issues." "Actually," I interrupted, "let's discuss your documented criminal behavior first." I nodded to Jean, who started distributing folders to each board member. "What you're looking at," I continued, "is evidence of systematic fraud, corporate espionage, and criminal conspiracy spanning the last 7 years. Samantha's face tightened. "These are obviously fabricated." "Page 3, I cut her off. "Emails between you and Richardson Global, detailing how to sabotage our Asian expansion project." Page 7, "Offshore account statements showing kickbacks from our competitors." And page 12, "Cooper's sworn testimony about the money laundering operation you orchestrated." The board members flipped through the documents, murmuring amongst themselves. Samantha's perfectly manicured nails drummed against the table. "This is absurd," she laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Lauren is clearly having another breakdown. I have medical records, the illegally accessed and altered medical records that Jasmine posted online." I pressed a button on my phone. "Records that were modified from your personal computer, as the metadata proves?" The boardroom door opened. A woman in a sharp suit entered, flanked by 2 men in dark jackets. "Mrs. Dawson." The woman held up a badge. "I'm Agent Sarah Martinez, FBI. We need to ask you some questions about certain financial transactions." Samantha's composure cracked. "This is ridiculous. I demand—" "Perhaps," I interrupted again, "you'd like to explain the recording of you threatening my life, the one where you celebrated destroying evidence of your threats?" The colour drained from her face. "Or maybe," I continued, "you'd prefer to discuss the video of you instructing Cooper how to launder money through crypto exchanges. He's been very cooperative with federal investigators, by the way." "Cooper would never—" she started, then stopped as Agent Martinez placed a laptop in front of her, playing the damning footage. "Samantha Harper Dawson," Martinez began, "you're under investigation for fraud, money laundering, conspiracy." "You can't do this to me," Samantha shrieked, jumping to her feet. "I built this company. I controlled everything." "Exactly," I said quietly. "You just confessed in front of 12 board members and federal agents. Well done." She lunged across the table at me, but security was faster. As they restrained her, she screamed, "You're nothing! You hear me? Nothing!" "Actually," Jean stood up, "as controlling trustee of Second Chances LLC, and with these criminal allegations, Lauren now has full voting control of the company." The boardroom doors opened again, revealing a crowd of reporters with cameras rolling, capturing Samantha's complete meltdown. "You planned this," she hissed as the agents led her toward the door. "You orchestrated everything." I smiled. "I learned from the best. You taught me how to manipulate, remember? How to plan, how to wait for the perfect moment. Your father would be ashamed. My father," I cut her off one final time, "helped me plan this. Every detail, every contingency. That red envelope? It wasn't just about the trust. It was the key to exposing everything you'd done." The reporters were shouting questions, cameras flashing as Samantha was led away. Her perfect mask had crumbled completely, revealing the rage and desperation beneath. "The board will be taking a short recess," Jean announced. after which we'll discuss the company's new direction under Ms. Lauren's leadership. As the room cleared out, Rose slipped in through a side door. Jasmine's been served with papers for the HIPAA violation, she reported, and Cooper's testimony has been formally entered into evidence. It's over. I sat down heavily in my father's old chair, running my fingers along the armrest where he used to grip it during tense meetings. Lauren? Rose touched my shoulder. You okay? I found something else in Dad's papers this morning, I said quietly, pulling out a photograph. From before Samantha, when it was just him and me. The picture showed a much younger version of myself, sitting on my father's shoulders, both of us laughing. On the back he'd written, "Remember who you really are." He never stopped loving you, Rose said softly. I know. I tucked the photo away and stood up. Come on, we have a company to rebuild. Outside the boardroom, reporters were still filming as Samantha was escorted into a waiting federal vehicle. Our eyes met through the window. She mouthed something that looked like, "I'll destroy you." I just smiled and turned away. She'd already tried her best to destroy me once. This time, I'd destroyed her instead. The mansion looked different in the rain, smaller somehow. I stood in the foyer, watching Samantha pack her designer bags under the supervision of 2 federal agents. Her house arrest conditions allowed her 1 hour to collect personal belongings before the asset freeze took full effect. "This isn't over," she said, stuffing jewellery into a Gucci bag. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." "Actually, I do." I held up my phone, displaying emails she'd sent to Richardson Global. "Threatening to have competitors' children kidnapped? That's a new low, even for you." She froze. "Where did you get those?" "Dad had a backup email server. Everything you sent, everything you deleted, he kept it all. The FBI is particularly interested in these threats." "You stupid girl," she hissed. "You think you've won? I still have friends, powerful friends." "Like Marcus Richardson?" I smiled as her face paled. "He flipped on you this morning. Turns out he kept recordings of all your conversations. Smart man." The agents began zipping up her bags. Her time was almost up. "Wait," she said suddenly. "There's something in the study I need to get." "Mrs. Dawson, your time is—" one agent began. "It's fine," I interrupted. "I'll accompany her." The study still smelled like my father's cologne. Samantha went straight to his desk, reaching for a hidden compartment I knew well. "Looking for this?" I pulled out a small recording device. "Dad's old dictaphone? The one with your confession about threatening my life?" She straightened up slowly. "How long have you known about that drawer?" "Since I was 12. Dad showed me all his hiding spots." I ran my hand along the desk's edge. "Just like he showed me where he kept evidence of your first husband's mysterious death." That hit home. Her perfectly maintained facade cracked completely. "You know nothing about that," she whispered. "Insurance policy payouts, suspicious bank transfers, emails to a now-deceased private investigator." I met her eyes. "Dad knew everything, Samantha. He just waited for the right moment, and the right person, to expose it all." She moved faster than I expected, lunging for my throat. But I was ready. Sidestepping her attack, I watched as she stumbled, crashing into the desk. "Federal agents!" The officers burst in, weapons drawn. "She attacked me!" Samantha shrieked, trying one last desperate play. "She's unstable, just like I've been saying." "You mean like this?" I pointed to the security camera in the corner, its red light blinking. "The one that just recorded everything?" The fight drained out of her as the agents cuffed her. "You destroyed my family," I said quietly. "Made my father doubt himself. Doubt me. Made him so afraid for my safety that he had to push me away to protect me. He was weak," she spat. "Easy to manipulate. Just like Cooper." "No." I pulled out my father's final letter. "He was playing you. Every step of the way. Building evidence, protecting assets, preparing for this moment." "Time to go, Mrs. Dawson," the agent said firmly. As they led her toward the door, I called out, "One last thing." She turned, hatred burning in her eyes. "Dad left you a message." I pressed play on my phone. My father's voice filled the room. "Samantha, if you're hearing this, then Lauren has finally done what I couldn't. Exposed you for what you really are. Everything you took from her, everything you stole from me. It's all going back where it belongs. You thought you were so clever, but you forgot one thing. A father's love is stronger than any manipulation. Tears streaked her perfect makeup as she was led away. Through the window, I watched her climb into the waiting police car, her designer bags tossed in the trunk like garbage. Rose appeared beside me. "You okay?" "Look what I found," I said, pulling out an old photo album. Pictures from before. Dad kept them hidden in that drawer, along with evidence of every crime she ever committed. "Smart man," Rose smiled. "He knew her type," I nodded. "Said she wasn't the first social climber to try destroying a family for money. Just the last one he'd let succeed." My phone buzzed. A news alert. Dawson Holdings, CEO arrested, corporate conspiracy and murder investigation reopened. "Murder investigation?" Rose asked. "Her first husband's case is being reopened," I explained. "Dad had evidence she was involved. He kept everything, Rose. Every dark secret, every criminal act. He was building a case for years." "For you," she said softly. "For justice," I corrected, looking around the study one last time. "Come on, we have work to do." Outside, the rain had stopped. The police car carrying Samantha disappeared around the corner, taking with it 7 years of pain and betrayal. My father's voice echoed in my head. Everything has its time. Finally, it was time for truth. Time for justice. Time for healing. The autumn wind rustled through the cemetery as I placed fresh flowers on my father's grave. The marble headstone was still new enough to shine. "You should see the company now, Dad," I said softly. "Everything you built, everything she almost destroyed, we've made it stronger than ever." "Lauren?" A familiar voice made me turn. Cooper stood awkwardly at the edge of the path, holding his own bouquet. "Didn't expect to see you here," I said. He stepped forward carefully, like a wounded animal expecting a trap. "I just finished my community service, part of the plea deal. I heard you're working with the FBI, helping them track down other crypto fraud schemes. It's a way to make things right." He placed his flowers next to mine. "I got a letter from Mum yesterday, from prison. Let me guess, she wants you to help appeal her conviction." He shook his head. "She wants me to find her hidden accounts, the ones even you haven't discovered yet. And I told her to rot in hell." His voice cracked. "I visited her first husband's daughter last week, told her everything I knew about what Mum did to her father. She deserved the truth." I studied him carefully. The entitled boy who'd sneered at me during the will reading was gone. This Cooper looked older, wearier, but somehow more real. "What about Jasmine?" I asked. "In rehab. The HIPAA violation charges scared her straight. She's actually getting help. Real help." My phone buzzed. Rose sending me updates about the new foundation we'd started. "First grant approved. Helping families affected by financial abuse and fraud." "I saw the news about your foundation," Cooper said. "Using company profits to help people like the ones Mum hurt. It's what Dad would have wanted. Lauren?" He shifted uncomfortably. "There's something else you should know. The night you left, I heard Mum threatening you. I was 16, hiding in the hallway. I could have spoken up, could have backed up your story, but I was too scared." "You were a kid, Cooper." "I was a coward," he corrected. "Just like I was a coward every time she made me help her hurt people. But I'm not that person anymore." A sleek black car pulled up to the cemetery gates. Dominic, right on time for our board meeting. "I should go," I said. "The company—" "Wait." Cooper reached into his jacket. "I found this in Mum's personal files during the FBI sweep. It's from Dad, to you." The envelope was old, yellowed at the edges. Inside was a single photograph. Me at my college graduation, taken from a distance. On the back, in my father's handwriting, "Proudest day of my life. Wish I could have told you." "He was there?" My voice wavered. "He went to everything," Cooper said quietly. "Your graduations, your first gallery showing, even watched your TED Talk online. Mum didn't know. He had a whole box of photos, newspaper clippings about your achievements. He never stopped being your father." The wind picked up, scattering autumn leaves across the grave. "The board is waiting," I said, tucking the photo carefully into my pocket. "Lauren?" Cooper called as I turned to leave. Do you think Do you think he'd be proud of what I'm doing now? I thought about my father's final message, his belief in redemption, in second chances. He believed people could change, I said finally. Prove him right. Walking to Dominic's car, I felt lighter somehow. The revenge I'd sought had brought justice. Yes, but also something unexpected. The chance for healing, for truth, for broken people to rebuild themselves. My phone buzzed again. A message from Jean. Your father would be proud of all of it. I looked back at the cemetery. Cooper was still standing by the grave, head bowed. Behind him, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the marble headstones. Everything has its time, I whispered my father's words. Time for revenge, time for justice, and now, finally, time for grace. Dominic opened the car door. Ready for the board meeting? I smiled, feeling the weight of the photograph in my pocket. Proof that even in the darkest times, love never really dies. It just waits for the right moment to reveal itself. Yes, I said. I'm ready. The car pulled away, leaving behind a father's grave, a reformed son, and the last remnants of a revenge served not just cold, but with purpose, with meaning, with hope.
Hi, my name is Patricia. I'm 32 years old, a spirited and independent woman. Let me take you on the roller coaster ride that is my marriage to Austin. It's quite the saga, so buckle up. Austin and I, like any couple, have had our share of highs and lows. I love him deeply, but there has always been a shadow over our relationship. His mother, Martha, no matter how hard I tried, nothing I did seemed to satisfy her. At family gatherings, she'd critique my cooking as if she were a Michelin star chef, nitpicking everything from the flavor to the presentation. It didn't stop there. Martha had a way of belittling my accomplishments too. When I shared the exciting news of a promotion at work during a dinner party, she dismissed it with a casual remark about her friends' children achieving far greater things. Even our wedding day wasn't spared. She whispered her disapproval to anyone who'd listen, casting a shadow over what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. You'd think Austin would defend me, but he seemed blind to her behavior. His silence cut deeper than Martha's words. I wished he'd stand up for me, for us. His father, Raymond, would occasionally call out Martha's actions, but I needed Austin to do it. Each time he remained passive. It felt like a small, sharp cut, a painful reminder that I wasn't his priority. Over time, my frustration grew. It wasn't just about Martha's critiques. It was about Austin's inability, or unwillingness, to stand by my side. The tension reached a boiling point when Austin announced a sudden business trip to Florida, just days after returning from another one. Another trip? Really, Austin? I asked, bewildered. It's an important meeting. It can't wait, he replied, brushing off my concerns. Why Florida? And why now? Can't someone else handle it? His vague explanations only fueled my suspicions, but I didn't press the issue further. Instead, I tried to convince myself it was just business, though doubt lingered in my mind. As the trip progressed, things felt increasingly off. Austin insisted on audio calls instead of FaceTime, blaming poor hotel Wi-Fi. Babe, don't worry, he said, but his reassurances didn't sit right. Once, during a call, I heard a woman's voice in the background. When I asked about it, he brushed it off, claiming it was just hotel staff. The trust that anchored our relationship began to crack. Conversations grew shorter, and his excuses felt more implausible. By the fourth day, I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that something was wrong. I attempted to FaceTime him again, desperate for clarity. This time, when the call connected, it wasn't Austin who appeared on the screen, it was Martha. She was lounging in a beach chair, wearing sunglasses, looking utterly relaxed. Martha, what are you doing there? Where's Austin? I asked, my voice trembling with shock. With a smug smile, she replied, Oh, Patricia, dear, you didn't really think he was on a business trip, did you? Honestly, he didn't need to hide this from you, but I suppose it shows how pushy you can be. Her words hit me like a slap. Austin had lied to me, and there was his mother, basking in the sun, as if her betrayal was nothing. So, you're telling me you both planned a secret vacation without me? I demanded, anger bubbling up inside. Well, yes, she admitted nonchalantly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I pressed for answers, needing to understand. I wanted to visit my hometown, and I wanted to do it with my son. Is that really so wrong? Martha responded as though it were the most natural thing in the world, completely dismissing my feelings. Her nonchalant attitude toward their deceit was beyond frustrating. It felt like a betrayal. "Why did you feel the need to keep this a secret? Why leave me out?" I asked, my voice heavy with confusion and hurt. Martha answered calmly, "This trip was meant just for me and my son. It's our special time together." I couldn't hide my dismay. "But I'm his wife. Shouldn't I be included? This could have been an opportunity for us to work through things. And honestly, I could have used a break, too." Her response was blunt, almost indifferent. "Well, you didn't get a vacation. Sorry about that, but that's just how it is." Her dismissive tone stung, but I tried to keep my composure, setting aside your attitude for a moment. "I just want to make it clear, even if you planned this trip without me, I could have handled it if you'd been honest from the start. The secrecy isn't necessary." Martha, however, didn't hold back. "We kept it a secret because we didn't want you to know. It wasn't about whether you'd mind or not. We just didn't want you to be a part of it. Your constant calls, though, made us tell you the truth." I was stunned. "Are you serious? Martha, what has happened to you?" She rolled her eyes, her tone dismissive. "Oh, stop overreacting. You're blowing this out of proportion, as usual." I fought back the rising frustration. "I'm not being dramatic. After all these years of dealing with your difficult attitude, I have every right to feel upset." Martha tried to downplay the situation. "Oh, Patricia dear, sometimes it's better not to know everything your husband does. It was just a small getaway, a special moment for us. You wouldn't understand." Her words stung like a slap. Betrayal, anger, and sadness hit me all at once. They had planned this intentionally, keeping me completely in the dark. The weight of their secrecy made me question what else they might have hidden from me. How often had these secret trips taken place? Why had they gone to such lengths to exclude me? As the trust one had in Austin began to crack, I was interrupted by his voice, tense and strained. "Mom, why did you pick up the phone? What's going on?" Martha's voice was firm. "It's time Patricia knew the truth. It's been 5 days." Austin quickly snatched the phone from her, his face draining of color as he realized how deeply his lies had entangled him. He looked at the screen, knowing he was caught. "Why did you lie about the business trip, Austin? The Wi-Fi was working fine the past few days, wasn't it?" I demanded, my anger and confusion building. "I didn't want to upset you," he admitted sheepishly. "Well, of course, I'm upset," I snapped. "I thought you were avoiding me. It's odd that you want to spend time with your mom. But Austin, you've been neglecting our relationship. I felt distant from you. If you just wanted time with her, you should have been honest. Even if I'd been disappointed about not being invited, it would have been better than feeling like you were keeping secrets from me." Austin tried to justify his actions, but it was clear he hadn't thought through how this would affect me. "Austin," I said, frustration rising in my chest, "I wouldn't have been upset if you'd just been honest. It's not about the trip, it's about the secrecy. And honestly, when I heard women's voices in the background during your calls, I started to think you might be cheating." I exclaimed, the hurt in my voice unmistakable. "What? No way," Austin shot back, clearly shocked by my accusation. "Yeah, well, when you keep things from me, what am I supposed to think?" I replied bitterly. "I have a special bond with my mom. Sometimes we just need our space," Austin tried to explain. "In Florida, of all places? You both hate Florida. And what about visiting Jess? Weren't we supposed to see her together?" My questions hung in the air, unanswered, and I could feel the weight of my disappointment growing. The inconsistencies in his story were impossible to ignore. I confronted him, my voice firm. "So this secret was just between you and your mom? Did your dad even know about it?" Austin stuttered. "I can't talk right now." "Well, I hope this trip was worth it," I said, my voice unwavering, "because when you come back, you might not have a wife to return to." "Austin, please just wait," he pleaded, but I had no patience left. I ended the call and blocked any further attempts from him to reach me. Alone in my room, I paced back and forth, overwhelmed by a storm of confusion and anger. Why would Austin hide something so trivial? One thing I'd always believed was that small lies often pointed to bigger secrets. The idea of Austin secretly spending time with his mom was almost absurd. Part of me wished it was something as simple as an affair, something I could at least understand. His distant, secretive behavior, and his mother's meddling, however, were harder to grasp. I knew I needed advice from someone who might understand, so I decided to call my father-in-law, hoping he could shed some light on the situation. "Hey, it's Patricia," I need to talk to you about something important, I said as soon as he answered. I poured out everything, the deception that was straining my marriage, the betrayal that was swirling inside me. I told him how Austin had fabricated a story about a business trip and how Martha seemed to revel in keeping me out of the loop, enjoying the control it gave her over our relationship. The weight of their deceit was suffocating. I could hear Raymond's shock and hurt in his voice. What? I had no idea about any of this. I'm so sorry, Patricia, he said, his tone serious and filled with concern. He paused for a moment before continuing. Martha told me she was going to Florida to mend things with her mother. I believed her. I corrected him, my voice firm. Austin just confessed. They weren't planning to visit Jessica at all. She doesn't even know about any supposed visit. Raymond's reaction confirmed how blindsided he was. I can't believe Martha would orchestrate something like this, he said, clearly dismayed by the web of lies his wife had spun, entangling all of us. It's one thing to disagree, but deceiving your own family? That's something else entirely. It's unforgivable. I felt the same. The deceit was too deep to simply overlook. They both need to learn a lesson, I replied, my anger fueling a new determination to set things right. Our conversation ended with plans and mutual encouragement to face what was ahead. I hung up, eagerly awaiting the outcome of Raymond's conversation with Jessica. Hours later, he called back with updates that only deepened the gravity of the situation. His voice trembled with a mix of anger and sorrow as he recounted the details. I told her everything, Patricia. Jessica was furious, absolutely devastated. She couldn't believe her daughter would go this far and deceive everyone, Raymond explained. She deserves to know the truth. Martha's been unbearable for too long, I replied, still reeling from the betrayal. Well, Jessica's ready to take matters into her own hands. She's planning to give Martha a lesson she won't soon forget. She's fed up with Martha's antics and wants to show her what true rudeness looks like, Raymond continued. Curious about the deeper issues at play, I asked, what exactly is the issue between Martha and Jessica? Raymond sighed before responding, it's quite ironic, Patricia. Martha's always claimed that her mother was rude and cruel to her. They've had a rocky relationship ever since Martha ran away, and it's been toxic, with years of being in and out of contact. But after speaking with Jessica for the past hour, I'm beginning to think that Martha might have been the problem all along. He paused, reflecting on the broader implications. It's crazy. I've been married to Martha for all these years, and yet you've uncovered more about our family secrets in this short time than I ever did. I should have been more curious. The revelations were startling, casting new light on the family dynamics and hinting at deep-seated issues that had been simmering beneath the surface. I should have been more assertive, Raymond lamented. How could you have known? I reassured him. Don't be too hard on yourself. You were just trusting your wife, being a good husband, and you've stepped up more than Austin has. That counts for something. Thanks, Patricia. I appreciate everything. I'm glad I could help, though it's unfortunate it had to come to this. Yeah, I guess so, but I'm looking forward to seeing Jessica show them her true colors, Raymond responded, a mix of anticipation and relief in his voice. The next day, the fallout from our revelations began to unfold. Austin, failing to grasp the full seriousness of the situation, called me, clearly agitated. Patricia, what did you do? He demanded. What do you mean? I replied, trying to remain calm. Don't play dumb with me. Jessica is here, and nobody else knew we were in town except you. She said she came because she heard we were here. His frustration was palpable, and I could hear a commotion in the background, likely Jessica confronting Martha. I'm glad she knows the truth. Everyone deserves to. After all your sneaking around, I shot back. How could you do this, Patricia? I could hear Martha's voice now, angry and accusatory. You ungrateful little rat. How dare you expose us like this? I couldn't help but chuckle softly, though my laughter was tinged with bitterness. Before I could respond, another voice, stern and authoritative, cut in. Don't you dare speak to that young lady like that, Raymond interjected. I've had enough of your insolence. You've been telling everyone how rude and nasty I was to you, huh? When all I did was care for you and help you out of trouble. You were such a problem child, lying about everything and being nasty to everyone, and I see that lifestyle has followed you into adulthood. The argument escalated, and I heard the sound of something breaking, likely a glass or a vase. The intensity of the shouting made me slightly fearful, but I quickly realized this was the consequence of Austin's actions. He was an adult, responsible for his choices. Over the next few days, Austin repeatedly asked for my forgiveness, claiming his grandmother was driving him crazy. Each time he called, I reminded him that this was his own doing. Meanwhile, Martha and Jessica continued their heated exchanges. I was surprised they hadn't been kicked out of the hotel where they were staying, given the chaos. As their 10-day trip neared its end, Austin revealed something even more shocking. "Patricia, please, you need to talk to Jessica," he pleaded. "I tried talking to Dad, but he's still upset with Mom and me." "Slow down, what's going on? Weren't you two supposed to be coming back? I thought you learned your lesson," I asked, trying to keep up with the unfolding drama. "Well, Jessica doesn't think," Austin started, hinting that the troubles were far from over. "She intends to join us on the flight, hoping to follow us back and make sure my mother behaves like a dignified adult, rather than acting like an unruly teenager." "Wow, that's quite the surprise," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Perhaps next time you'll advocate for what's right instead of participating in your mother's plots." "I'll see you when you get back," I concluded, ending the call. "Patricia, I'm sorry for everything. Haven't you punished us enough? Please, talk to Jessica and convince her not to come with us," Austin implored, his desperation evident. "I don't think so, dear. It's not my place to stop her. She's quite formidable," I replied dismissively. "How do you think that makes us feel?" Austin pressed. "Honestly, your feelings aren't my concern right now. You've misled me for far too long, and you never defended me when your mom mistreated me. Now you're just experiencing the consequences. Don't be upset with me. Have a safe trip, or at least as safe as it can be with those two together," I asserted firmly before ending the call. A sense of vindication enveloped me, realizing that I had finally confronted the persistent negativity in our lives. Jessica, our unexpected champion, had initiated her form of retribution, igniting a spark of anticipation within me. Now, I looked forward to their return, eager to hear the stories Jessica would undoubtedly have, imagining her making their flight a challenge. The taste of revenge was indeed delicious.
I married Raymond because he was the son of my former boss, and 4 years ago, we tied the knot. Although we haven't started a family yet, our life together has generally been happy. Raymond is dedicated to his work and often travels, which can leave me feeling lonely, but he makes up for it by spending quality time with me when he's home. I first met Raymond through my father, and it wasn't long before he suggested I become a stay-at-home wife. This arrangement gave me the time to pursue my own interests. I took up sewing and knitting, befriended our neighbors, and even started a fitness routine. Every winter, I'd gift Raymond handmade scarves and gloves. At first, my attempts were a bit amateurish, but his appreciative comments over the years encouraged me, and I grew to love crafting even more. I'd often dream of the day when we can sew together as a family. I once shared this thought with Raymond, and he smiled warmly, entertaining the idea of joining me in the future. To outsiders, our life may seem privileged, thanks to Raymond's substantial income. But I never skimped on supporting him, managing the household, and making the most of our time together on his days off. I imagined a quiet, content future with my kind husband and hopefully children. However, 3 years ago, everything changed. One evening, while waiting for Raymond to return home from work, I suddenly felt dizzy and collapsed. Raymond rushed back and took me to the hospital where I lay recovering, vulnerable. It was then, to my shock, that Raymond confessed with a smile, "I only married you because you're the boss's daughter." Seeing the scarves and gloves I had made for him discarded and devalued, I was struck with the need to confront him. I wanted him to realize how wrong he was if he thought he could belittle my worth. Despite the hurt, the thought of him eventually recognizing my value brought a small smile to my face. I am Ashley Carroll, and this revelation was a harsh wake-up call about the marriage I had once believed was built on love. When I woke up in the hospital, I overheard snippets of Raymond's conversation with the doctors. It became clear that my condition was serious, likely a lifelong issue, though not immediately life-threatening. Still, the risk of recurrence meant I would need to stay in the hospital for some time. Raymond tried to reassure me during one of his visits, holding my hand gently. "It looks like you'll be here for a while, but don't worry. I'll make time to visit, and we'll get through this together." His presence eased my anxiety, and for a moment I felt that everything might be okay with him by my side. True to his word, Raymond visited almost every day. He asked about my day, and noticing the monotony of hospital life, even brought my favorite sewing tools so we could pass the time together. Teaching my clumsy husband to sew became one of the highlights of my days. It helped me momentarily forget the dreariness of the hospital and feel connected to him. This routine continued for about a year, and I knitted a scarf for him as part of our yearly tradition. But after that, his visits grew less frequent. At first, I thought it was just work piling up, so I kept myself busy with sewing, planning to give him a pair of gloves I was making when he visited next. The doctors told me I'd likely be discharged by the end of the year, and I poured all my energy into crafting the gloves, hoping they would bridge the gap created by our time apart. However, when Raymond finally visited after a long absence, his reaction was chilling. He glanced at the gloves I offered and said, "Are you still making these? It's honestly a nuisance now." He then handed me the scarf I had knitted for him the previous year, untouched and pristine, along with divorce papers. Stunned, I could only stare as the reality of the situation sank in. The scarf was as new as the day I had given it to him, and his cold words marked the painful end of a marriage I had once believed was supportive. "Has it been 3 years since your hospitalization?" he remarked casually. "I heard you'll be discharged soon." His indifference was like a sharp blade cutting through everything I had cherished. "I can't keep taking care of you," Raymond said bluntly, pushing the divorce papers toward me. I stared at them, the weight of his words sinking in. His signature was already on the documents, a clear sign of his resolve. I had suspected this might happen, especially after his visits became less frequent, but I had told myself it was just the stress of work, trying to dismiss my fears. The caring Raymond I had known would have kept me informed, no matter how busy he was. As he stood there waiting for my reaction, I managed to ask calmly, "Why do you want a divorce?" It wasn't desperation to hold on to him that prompted the question, but a resigned acceptance. If the gentle Raymond I loved thought divorce was necessary, maybe he was right. Still, part of me was confused. He had promised we would face this challenge together. Raymond's response was harsh and dismissive. "Isn't it obvious? Ever since I married you, all I've had are troubles." I was exhausted, tired of the scarves and gloves I gave him every year. "I only married you because you're the boss's daughter," he sneered, his words cutting deep. "How can I be expected to deal with your illness on top of everything else?" He laughed, and the sound was mocking, dismissing my affectionate gestures as trivial, and my illness as nothing more than an inconvenience. As his words sunk in, I noticed the high-end scarf he was wearing, one I didn't recognize, certainly not one I had made. It was sleek, expensive, far beyond anything I had ever crafted for him. The realization hit me hard. He had never appreciated any of the scarves or gloves I had poured my love into. In fact, he might have found them irritating from the start. "Who can even wear a handmade scarf without feeling embarrassed these days?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Receiving these things is a nuisance now." I felt a wave of sadness mixed with an odd sense of relief. The sadness came from realizing the man I had loved had changed so drastically. The relief, though, was that now I knew the truth. At least the clarity was painful but necessary. Looking at the divorce papers in front of me, I was struck by the contrast. My hospitalization had been a turning point in our relationship, one I hadn't understood until now. After my father retired, Raymond no longer needed to maintain appearances with me. All those visits he made between work commitments, I now saw them for what they were, part of a carefully crafted act to maintain his image. His workplace must have viewed him as a devoted husband, balancing his career and his wife's illness with grace. The sympathy and praise he received from coworkers made it easier for him at work, and he had used my condition to his advantage. When I finally confronted him about it, he admitted without remorse. If I stayed late, I was diligent. If I needed a break, I just mentioned my sick wife. It made things easier. "Honestly, I even got a promotion thanks to you. I have to thank your illness for that." The cold grin on his face made my heart sink. The man I had married, the man I thought I knew, was nowhere to be found. Our conversation ended with me handing him the signed divorce papers. He barely looked at them before saying, "Well, if I could be of help, that's good. We probably won't see each other again. Take care." He left without a second thought, showing no emotion. The divorce itself was a quiet affair, but in the silence that followed, I cried. When I was discharged from the hospital, I returned to live with my parents. My father was furious when he heard the full extent of Raymond's behavior. "I never thought he would be that kind of guy," he muttered in disbelief. But by then, I had found a sense of detachment and calm. I reassured him, telling him I just wanted to move forward. After sorting through my things at the house I had shared with Raymond, my parents supported me, encouraging me to do whatever made me happy. I decided to live with them for the time being, but I wanted one last visit to the house. I needed to collect the rest of my things and close that chapter of my life once and for all. However, when I arrived, I was met with an unsettling surprise. The front door lock was broken. My parents and I rang the doorbell, only to be greeted by a stranger. I asked who he was, and he informed me that he had purchased the house months ago and was now living there with his family. My parents were furious, but I chose not to escalate things. Instead, I walked away quietly, my mind racing with questions. I called Raymond, desperate for answers. He answered casually, "Yeah, I sold it while you were in the hospital. I'm keeping the money as compensation. It was my house to begin with, so you have no complaints, right?" His indifferent tone left me stunned, a cold sense of disbelief washing over me. I wished he had told me sooner. From what the new owner shared, it seemed the house had been sold quite a while ago, probably about a year, when my husband's visits had stopped. Although our divorce had been finalized with the signed papers, we had agreed to discuss asset division and compensation after my discharge, planning to meet the following week. Yet my husband had already taken matters into his own hands. His lack of awareness bothered me more than I expected. Over the phone, I said, "You don't understand anything, do you?" Confused, he asked, "Huh? What do you mean?" I replied, "I'll explain next week," and hung up, leaving him with more questions than answers. I turned to my parents, who were clearly worried, and asked my father for a favor. Despite the short notice, he quickly prepared the necessary documents for our upcoming meeting. "I've got it already," he said with determination. "There's not much time, but we'll manage." His resolve was partly fueled by guilt. He had introduced me to my husband, and his anger toward him for what had transpired. We sat together at my family's home, my parents and I positioned in a line, facing my husband, who sat alone on the other side. Despite the tension, he appeared unconcerned, even smirking slightly as the conversation unfolded. He claimed, "I'm the victim here, but I don't intend to demand too much. The proceeds from the sale of the house will suffice." His words were laced with arrogance, as though he were being generous. But his smugness was clear. My father's face reddened with anger, and I placed a hand on him, urging him to stay calm. We had the upper hand in this situation, and I knew it. "There's something important we need to discuss first," I began. At that moment, my father presented a document. "The land on which the house stands is owned by me," my father said firmly. I turned to my husband. "The house was in your name," I acknowledged, "but the land belongs to my father." The revelation hit him hard. Though he tried to mask his surprise with a dismissive tone, his eyes betrayed him. "So what? The house was mine. No one has the right to complain. You think you can retaliate with that?" I remained calm. "Yes, the house was in your name, and you probably checked that there were no legal issues with selling it. But let me explain the broader implications." I paused, letting the weight of the words settle in. "You're right, there was no problem with you selling the house. But think about the family who bought it. They own the house, but not the land. If my father decides to, he could demand rent from them, which would cause serious issues." I allowed that to sink in for a moment before continuing. "Of course, neither my father nor I intend to demand rent or evict them. We're not here to cause trouble. However, we can't just give up the rights to the land either. What we propose is selling the land directly to the family, ensuring they have full ownership. That way, they won't face any future legal disputes, and neither will you." The new owners, understandably, were upset when they learned of the situation. They realized that any complications stemming from this oversight would fall on the seller, my husband. They were ready to take legal action if necessary, which visibly unsettled him. I watched as his face turned pale, the realization of the mess he had created settling in. I could see that Raymond finally understood the severity of his mistake. His voice trembled as he asked, "What should I do?" I smiled faintly, keeping my composure. "The best course of action would be for the family to purchase the land from us. That way, they can fully own both the house and the land, resolving any legal ambiguities." I continued, "Of course, they weren't aware they needed to buy the land when they bought the house, and they will likely seek compensation for this unexpected expense. Given the prime location of the land, it could cost more than the house itself." This placed Raymond in a difficult position, but it was the consequence of his own decisions. By selling the house without considering the land ownership, he had created a complex issue, not only for himself but also for the unsuspecting family who had purchased the house. Now, he faced the potential financial fallout from his actions, which could include compensating the new owners for the cost of the land to fix the situation. Raymond's options were limited and financially perilous. If he gave up all his assets, he'd be left with nothing. Alternatively, he could attempt to buy back the house and pay for the land, along with a relocation fee for the family currently living there. This would return the property to his possession, but given the significant costs, especially the relocation fee, it was unlikely he'd make any profit. But beyond the financial mess, there was the issue of emotional damage. I looked at him steadily and said, "Raymond, your actions have caused me significant mental distress. I plan to seek compensation for that. Keep that in mind." Throughout our marriage, Raymond had used me as a stepping stone for his career. Now that I could see his manipulations clearly, I was disgusted by what I had once mistaken for love. I intended to file for damages over the emotional toll his actions had taken, even though proving emotional distress in court could be challenging. Raising the issue, however, was important, especially given his current predicament. As Raymond processed this, my father added fuel to the fire. Despite being retired and no longer working at the company, he had maintained strong connections. "I've been in touch with my old colleagues," he said with a note of satisfaction. "They've been quite vocal about their disapproval of how you've treated my daughter." My father's words drove home the fact that Raymond's reputation at work was deteriorating. His unethical behavior was no longer a secret. As we sat across from him, preparing to discuss the terms of property division and compensation, my demeanor was calm but firm. "Now that you understand the situation, we need to settle the division of property and compensation," I stated, clasping my hands and offering a smile. It was a smile very different from those I had given him during our marriage. This one came from someone who had reclaimed their power. Raymond, visibly shaken by the weight of his financial and social collapse, could only manage a forced laugh, his eyes brimming with tears. The negotiations that followed were decidedly in my favor. Resigned to his fate, Raymond agreed to the terms, which included paying me alimony. This meeting wasn't just about dividing property, it was a moment of realization for Raymond, a stark reminder of the consequences of his actions. It marked the end of his manipulative tactics. With every decision made, I felt a sense of closure, of empowerment, finally turning the page on a challenging chapter of my life. We agreed that Raymond would buy the land where our house was located, ensuring the family who had purchased our home could live there without further legal complications. We explained the situation to them, and thankfully, they were understanding and appreciative of our efforts to resolve the matter. In the end, everyone found a resolution that worked for them, except for Raymond. The consequences of his actions began to unfold quickly. The rumors my father had unintentionally set in motion took their toll. His colleagues' perceptions of him shifted dramatically, and his once promising promotion was indefinitely postponed due to concerns over his integrity. These rumors continued to erode his professional standing, ultimately leading to his resignation. While I could attribute his downfall to karma, it was a stark reminder that gains made through exploitation are fragile and can easily crumble. As for me, I returned to living with my parents and started running a sewing class from their home. It wasn't a thriving business, but it was fulfilling. My classes, attended by neighborhood wives and their children, provided a modest income. Though I had once dreamed of teaching my children to sew, life had taken a different turn. Now, I found joy in sharing my skills and passion for sewing with others in the community. This new chapter of my life wasn't just about making ends meet. It was about finding contentment and building a sense of community by sharing what I loved. It confirmed that happiness often comes from the most unexpected places. Hello, everyone. My name is Betty, and I'd like to share a personal story with you. My mother-in-law, Madison, wasn't always the superficial and self-centered person she appears to be today. According to my husband, Edward, her transformation occurred later in life. Edward grew up in humble circumstances. His world changed drastically when he lost his father at the age of 5, leaving Madison to become the sole provider. Despite the challenges, she rose to the occasion, ensuring they had a stable, albeit modest, life. This resilience makes her current behavior even more striking. Through sheer determination and brilliance, Edward earned a full scholarship to medical school and eventually became a respected doctor. Despite his professional success, he remains grounded, a trait I deeply admire. However, Madison's lifestyle shifted dramatically after Edward's career took off. She embraced luxury, a far cry from the humble life they once shared. To give some context about myself, I am not currently employed, though I will explain why later. However, this does not mean I am financially unstable or reliant on others. Unfortunately, my first meeting with Madison got off to a rocky start due to her harsh misjudgment of my appearance and demeanor. When we met, her reaction was anything but welcoming. "Edward, is this the girl you've been excited about?" she questioned, scrutinizing me. "She looks so ordinary and unremarkable. Why her? Does she even work?" In that moment, Madison unfairly branded me as a potential gold digger, assuming I had ulterior motives for being with Edward. Her comments cut deeply, creating a tense dynamic from the start. Despite Edward's efforts to defend me, the encounter escalated into a heated argument. Eventually, we left, and during the drive home, Edward apologized for his mother's behavior. He admitted she had overstepped her boundaries and tried to reassure me. "She's changed," Edward explained. "She's not the person she used to be. Please don't take her words to heart." Although his words were comforting, the thought of maintaining a relationship with Madison felt daunting. However, as Edward's only remaining parent, I knew cutting ties completely wasn't a practical solution. "I'm not asking you to be friends with her," Edward said gently, "but could you try to be civil?" Reluctantly, I agreed to be respectful, though I doubted Madison would return the favor. "Don't worry, Betty," he reassured me. "If she steps out of line again, we'll reassess how we handle things. I love my mom, but I love you too, and I won't let her mistreat you." Even with Edward's support, I remained uneasy about my relationship with Madison. 4 years later, Edward and I got married in a simple courthouse ceremony, largely due to financial constraints. Edward was still supporting Madison, sending her a significant portion of his income each month for so-called emergencies. This practice continued after our marriage, putting the strain on our own finances. I never interfered with Edward's decision to support his mother, believing it was his right and responsibility. However, Madison's behavior became increasingly problematic. She often spoke negatively about me to her friends, spreading rumors that painted me as a gold digger. At first, I tried to ignore the slander, but it began to damage my reputation. Despite Edward's best efforts to mediate, Madison remained cold and distrustful. She was convinced I wasn't a suitable match for her son and treated me with disdain and suspicion. The ongoing tension made me question how long we could sustain this fragile family dynamic. Then, one day, Edward shared unexpected news. Madison wanted to invite me to a small gathering she was planning. Given her clear dislike for me, I was skeptical of her sudden change of heart. Edward, however, reassured me. "She wants to make amends," he said confidently. "She's trying to turn over a new leaf." Although I harbored doubts about Madison's intentions, I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. Edward was hopeful this could be a step toward repairing our strained relationship, and I wanted to approach the situation with an open mind. As the party date approached, I waited for more details from Madison with a mixture of eagerness and apprehension. Then the next day, Madison sent me a text. Assuming she was confirming the invitation, I opened it with cautious optimism. Her message began with a casual mention of the venue, a renowned five-star hotel that was the talk of the town. She described the glamorous event she was hosting for 21 guests, proudly detailing how fabulous it would be. Feeling uncertain, I asked if I was still invited, based on what Edward had told me. Madison's response left me stunned. With an air of arrogance, she clarified that I was not invited. She emphasized the exclusivity of the event, the prestige of her guests, and her family's supposed wealth, making it clear that I wasn't part of her plans. I was humiliated and confused. Edward had been so sure she was extending an olive branch, yet here I was, excluded and belittled. Though hurt, I knew I had to maintain my composure. I calmly responded to Madison, explaining the misunderstanding, but her reply was patronizing. She suggested I couldn't possibly comprehend the complexities of organizing an event of such high caliber. Faced with her disdain, I chose to preserve my dignity, acknowledging her message without engaging further. After Madison's dismissive reply, I made it clear I had no interest in attending the gathering where I wasn't welcome. Rather than soften her tone, Madison doubled down, flaunting her supposed status and exclusivity. Though I felt a strong urge to respond in anger, I decided against it. Instead, I chose not to share the upsetting exchange with Edward and waited for the day of the party to pass. On the day of the event, Madison, seemingly oblivious to the emotional toll her words had caused, sent me a photo of herself and her friends dressed in lavish designer outfits. She later posted boastful updates on social media, highlighting the elegance of their evening. I ignored it all, focusing on my work and patiently waiting to see how things would unfold. About 2 hours later, I received an unexpected call from my father, which brought a surprising twist to the story. Here's something I hadn't shared widely. My father owns the very hotel where Madison was hosting her party, a fact she was unaware of. 4 years ago, I inherited a substantial sum from my grandfather, which I invested in my father's business. As a result, I now receive a share of the profits from the hotel and other family-owned enterprises. Despite my comfortable financial situation, I've always preferred to maintain a low profile, which is why Madison had no idea about my connection to the venue. My father's call revealed another layer of irony. Madison and her friends, oblivious to the high costs associated with such a luxurious venue, had racked up a bill of $4,000. After enjoying their extravagant evening, they requested a 60% discount, claiming they were short on cash. My father, aware of the situation and having heard complaints from staff about Madison's group being rude and entitled, sought my advice on how to handle it. As he described the scenario, I couldn't help but reflect on the irony. Madison, who had used the party to flaunt her supposed superiority, couldn't afford the event she had so proudly hosted. I shared my frustrations with my father, recounting how Madison had demeaned me while unknowingly hosting her event at my family's property. The situation felt like an unexpected poetic form of retribution for her earlier behavior. As my father and I discussed Madison's ostentatious display and the burdens she and her guests had placed on the staff, he fully grasped the irony of the moment. Together, we decided how to address the issue in a way that would both uphold the hotel's policies and serve as a quiet, meaningful lesson for Madison. Half-jokingly, I suggested to my dad that Madison and her entourage could make amends by washing dishes and cleaning the restaurant floors, considering their disrespectful behavior toward the staff. While the idea carried a hint of poetic justice, it also presented an opportunity to teach a lesson in humility and respect. My dad, amused by the suggestion, playfully added that if Madison escalated the matter, involving the authorities was always an option, though we hoped it wouldn't come to that. He chuckled at my suggestion, giving it an enthusiastic endorsement, and even joked about documenting the moment with photos. What started as an offhand comment soon turned into reality. About an hour later, my dad sent me pictures of Madison and her friends, visibly humbled, washing dishes and mopping the restaurant floors. When Madison realized my dad was the owner of the hotel, her attitude initially shifted to one of relief, assuming her connection to him would get her out of the predicament. However, to her shock, my dad insisted she and her guests take responsibility for their actions. Temporarily dumbfounded, Madison protested, but my dad reminded her firmly that since she didn't consider me family, she couldn't expect familial courtesies either. The irony of the situation was undeniable. While part of me regretted not witnessing the scene in person, the photos were proof enough of the day's unexpected turn. Later that evening, Edward came home visibly unsettled. It was clear Madison had reached out to him, likely providing a skewed version of the events. He approached me with concern, asking about the claim that his mother had been forced to clean at the restaurant. I knew I needed to tread carefully, balancing my desire for vindication with the importance of preserving my relationship with Edward. Calmly, I explained the situation in full detail, emphasizing that what had happened was a natural consequence of Madison's behavior. I outlined how Madison had come to her family-owned hotel, racked up a $4,000 bill, claimed she could only pay $2,000, and harassed the staff throughout the event. Her ostentatious party had turned into an absolute nightmare for everyone involved, and my dad's actions were entirely justified. Edward, clearly stunned, asked about the details of the gathering, including the guests and what they had ordered. I explained that, contrary to what Madison had told him, she hadn't brought just 5 people. She had brought 21 guests who had indulged in the most expensive items on the menu. Edward was speechless. Madison had not only misled him about the guest list, but she had also lied about inviting me, claiming I had declined. The truth left him grappling with a mix of frustration and disbelief as the dynamics of the situation became clearer to him. I corrected Edward by showing him the text messages from Madison, which clearly demonstrated I was never genuinely invited to her event. At his request, I also provided the restaurant bills and shared the full text exchanges. To substantiate the costs further, my father sent him receipts, and I showed Edward photos of Madison's lavish party. As Edward reviewed the evidence, his initial disbelief turned to anger. Without hesitation, he called Madison to confront her about the glaring discrepancies in her story. Madison attempted to downplay the situation, claiming she had only mentioned being short on cash and accusing me of twisting the story to sabotage her. Edward wasn't buying it. He pointed out the inconsistencies between her words and the evidence and reminded her of the insult she had thrown my way, saying I wasn't classy enough to attend her event. Madison tried to dismiss her remark as a harmless joke, but Edward remained unconvinced. He pressed her on her irresponsible spending, especially since it was coming out of his pocket, and criticized her for insulting his wife while wasting money on her friends. Madison scrambled to justify her actions, but Edward's profound disappointment was unmistakable. "Mom," he said firmly, "I made a mistake by always giving you money whenever you needed it. But guess what? That ends now." Desperate, Madison protested. "Edward, you've been so supportive all this time. You can't just stop now. It was just a one-time mistake. Why are you overreacting?" "No, Mom," Edward retorted, his voice steady with resolve. "This isn't just a one-time mistake. If you can't even consider my wife as family, then I don't want anything to do with you. I always hoped you'd change your attitude, but you haven't. I'm not going to keep funding your lifestyle while you insult my wife and call her classless. This ends now." Edward didn't wait for a response. He hung up, blocked her number, and turned to me, his demeanor softening. He apologized profusely for ducking me initially and for not understanding the full extent of the situation sooner. I forgave him, appreciating that he had stood up for me when it mattered most. We had a serious discussion about Madison and decided that, for now, it was best to distance ourselves from her. Edward, though wealthy, remained humble and found his mother's behavior unacceptable. I agreed wholeheartedly, feeling both validated and relieved by his unwavering support. Together, we resolved to remove the negativity she brought into our lives. A few days later, the gravity of her actions began to dawn on Madison. Realizing she might have irreparably harmed her relationship with Edward, she panicked. However, the decision had been made. For us, it marked a new beginning, free from the strain and tension her presence had caused. With Edward ceasing financial support, Madison's lifestyle changed drastically. Accustomed to a high-end existence funded largely by Edward's generosity, she suddenly struggled to maintain her standard of living. Despite having a job, her earnings were insufficient to cover the opulent expenses she was used to. She eventually had to terminate her lease on her condo and move into a modest one-bedroom apartment, where budgeting for basic necessities became her new reality. Madison frequently emailed us about her financial difficulties, downplaying her past behavior and accusing us of overreacting. It was clear she wasn't ready to fully acknowledge her role in the estrangement. Meanwhile, Edward redirected his financial support toward my father's business, investing in the expansion of his hotel and restaurant ventures. We had aspirations to grow the business into larger cities, though those plans are still in the early stages. Amid these changes, life brought us unexpected joy. I discovered I was pregnant. Edward and I are thrilled and have been busy preparing for our new arrival. With a baby on the way, I'm relieved that our child will be shielded from the negativity Madison once brought into our lives. Should Madison ever wish to be part of our child's life, I am determined to ensure she does not impart any harmful influences. For now, we are focused on welcoming our child into a loving and stable environment, free from shallow or disruptive behavior. We appreciate any well wishes as we embark on this exciting journey of parenthood, determined to provide the best for our child. This morning, I made a breakfast soup, but it didn't turn out as well as I'd hoped. It's a bit thin and lacks flavor. Maybe next time we could try making it thicker, though we should be careful with the salt, since my doctor advised me to cut back on it. That said, I do enjoy bold flavors. Speaking of preferences, my mother-in-law Brittany is quite particular about her food. She loves it heavily seasoned, even though her health isn't the best. She's a bit overweight and on the verge of diabetes. Her doctor has warned her to be mindful of her diet, but she doesn't seem too concerned. She often adds extra salt and pepper to the dishes I prepare, no matter how many health-conscious spices I use. It's surprising how much seasoning she adds. and it never seems to satisfy her. I'm genuinely worried about her health if she keeps this up. Dealing with Brittany is challenging. She's often critical and difficult. My name is Diana. I'm 31, and aside from working, I manage our home. I've been married for 4 years, and we don't have children. The issue is I'm unable to have children, and Brittany never lets me forget it. She often tells me that as a woman, my inability to bear children makes me less valuable, and I should be grateful just to be allowed in the house. We've tried many times, and I've gone through countless treatments, but nothing has worked. It's been physically and emotionally draining. So, I've decided to stop the treatments. They're expensive, and continuing without any guarantee of success feels futile. My husband once mentioned that investing in fertility treatments felt pointless. This whole situation weighs heavily on me, especially when my husband echoes his mother's harsh words, agreeing that my inability to conceive somehow makes me incomplete. Despite everything, I've always wanted a child, but now I'm beginning to think it might be time to accept our circumstances and find peace with it. Even though my husband keeps urging me to try for a baby quickly, the pressure only makes things worse. I can't just get pregnant because it's expected of me. After stopping the fertility treatments, I thought maybe I could find happiness just with my husband, but my mother-in-law keeps pushing the idea of a grandchild. She often brings it up, even buying diapers and showing them to me, saying, "Look, I got diapers. You'll need them one day." To that, I responded, "Aren't those a bit small for you, Brittany?" She replied with excitement, "These are for a baby, can't you see?" I sarcastically shot back, "Well, I wouldn't know. I'm the broken woman who can't have kids." That comment upset her, and she stormed off to her room. I was relieved when she left, already exhausted from work and not in the mood to deal with her harsh remarks. It seems like her favorite pastime is making my life more difficult. We moved in with my in-laws after my father-in-law passed away a year ago. It was a tough time for Brittany, and around then, her doctor also warned her about her risk of diabetes. We moved in to support her, but despite her condition, she's doing okay as long as she sticks to her medications and follows a proper diet. Yet she often neglects her meds and eats whatever she likes, putting her health at risk. Honestly, it's exhausting to watch. I dread the thought of being responsible for her care. I'm still in my 20s, working full-time, and managing everything already feels overwhelming. The next day, my day off, I found myself caught up with household chores. Usually my mother-in-law spends her time lounging on the sofa with snacks, but to my surprise, she got up and wandered into my room. I didn't want her in there, but my hands were full, so I didn't object when she said she'd clean my room. "Thanks," I replied, though I couldn't shake the suspicion gnawing at me. She added, "You know, if you leave your room messy, you'll attract bugs." And I managed a strained smile, replying, "Sure, enjoy your clean room." But something about her behavior still didn't sit right with me. It seemed like she took my polite response as gratitude, but it only made me feel more uncertain about her intentions. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was up to something. That evening, I decided to sleep in my husband's room. He had been away on business since the day before and wouldn't be back for a while. Even if he found out, I knew he wouldn't mind. We usually slept in separate rooms because of my nursing job with its irregular hours and night shifts. Our relationship had grown a bit distant over time, and I didn't want to disturb him with my odd hours. After making sure my mother-in-law had gone to her room, I slipped into my husband's thinking, "She's in her room now. I can finally get some rest." I ended up spending 3 nights there. My mother-in-law, however, began to grow suspicious of my unusually upbeat demeanor. One day, she asked, "Are you sure you're not feeling any discomfort or anything?" I dodged her gaze and replied, "What do you mean?" She dropped the subject quickly, but it was clear she was thinking about something. Later that day, as she ate her meal alone, I prepared to relax before my night shift. Relaxing isn't easy with my mother-in-law around, though. She rarely helps with the housework and prefers to give me orders instead. It's hard to unwind when she's constantly lounging on the couch, munching on snacks, and absorbed in her women's manga. I couldn't help but feel like she was scheming her next move to rile me up. Glancing at the comic cover, I saw it was titled Epic Mother and Daughter-in-Law Swamp Battle. I rolled my eyes at her dramatic choice of reading material. My husband finally returned late from his trip around 9:00 p.m., looking utterly exhausted. "I'm going to take a bath," he announced. "Sure, I'll heat it for you. Have a beer while you wait," I suggested. He was about to agree when I added, "Actually, it's not safe to drink alcohol before a bath." He sighed and opted for a non-alcoholic beer instead, probably more out of habit than anything. I thought my caution was common sense. After all, even saunas have signs warning against drinking before entering. But it seems common sense isn't so common in our house. After his bath, my husband started singing loudly. We live in a single-family home, but it was late and I worried about the neighbors. "Hey, you're too loud," I called out. "Shut it, you're the one being loud," he shot back. I quietly urged him to stop, but then my mother-in-law intervened, walking into the bathroom area to defend him. "What's wrong with that?" she challenged. "You don't know how to treat your husband, do you? Always so inconsiderate and complaining." I snapped, "I'm not the one always complaining, Brittany." I shot back, "You're definitely not cute. Not that you were a beauty to begin with." She sneered in response. I shrugged it off, replying, "That's okay with me. I probably look like a knockout in some other country, no worries." Afterward, my husband finished his bath and started drinking. It was already 9:40 p.m., and I needed to leave for my shift at the hospital. Even though it was close by, there was still a lot to prepare for the busy night ahead. As I got ready to leave a bit early, I mentioned to my husband, "By the way, I've been sleeping in your room. Would you mind using mine tonight? My clothes are all over the place." He casually responded, "Sure, doesn't matter to me." "Okay, I'm heading out then. Take care," I whispered to him, trying to keep my voice low so Brittany wouldn't overhear. Just as I reached for my bag, I heard my husband let out a loud groan. I turned around to find him curled up on the floor, clutching his leg, his face twisted in pain. Brittany's face went pale as she panicked. "What's happening? Speak," she demanded, but he was too hurt to respond. I felt a rush of adrenaline, knowing I needed to act quickly. But then I noticed something strange. The floor was unusually slippery. Even in my socks, I felt like I could easily slip. "What on earth is this?" I exclaimed, looking at both my husband and Brittany. "Brittany, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything. It's not my fault," Brittany protested, but it was clear blaming anyone wouldn't help in that moment. Without hesitation, I called for an ambulance. My husband was rushed straight to the hospital where I worked, and suddenly, work became the last thing on my mind. At the hospital, he continued to clutch his leg, sweating and writhing in pain. "It hurts so bad," he groaned. "Hang in there, please," I pleaded, feeling helpless as I watched him suffer. Thankfully, a doctor quickly examined him and confirmed my fears. It was a broken leg, a fifth metatarsal fracture, just like I had suspected. His foot was visibly swollen, a typical sign of this kind of injury, usually caused by tripping or putting too much weight on the foot. I couldn't help but recall my own experience years ago when I twisted my ankle falling down the stairs. I'd been lost in my music, not paying attention, and heard a loud snap followed by searing pain. I'd been diagnosed with the same fracture. It was an embarrassing memory, but it rushed back as I saw my husband in similar distress. I ended up telling a white lie to my close friends about my husband's injury. Since the fracture wasn't life-threatening, he didn't need to stay at the hospital and was able to come home that day. I was still scheduled for my night shift, but my nursing supervisor insisted I take the night off. She said the injury wasn't severe, but she seemed genuinely concerned about us. Later, while my husband was resting, he remarked, "I survived, but now I've got a fever." "Well, you did break your leg, so a fever isn't too surprising," I replied, but I'm wondering why the floor was so slippery. Maybe we should ask Brittany about that. Curious and wary, I approached Brittany. "Hey, what did you do to the floor in the room?" I asked. Her response shocked me. "Well, the floor was slippery because I slipped and fell. I could have seriously hurt myself," she said defensively. Before I could say anything, my husband interjected. "Brittany," she then shockingly admitted, "that room is meant for my daughter-in-law." So I greased the floor. I was hoping she'd slip, so I put a lot of grease on it. "I never expected you to go in there and slip." I was in complete disbelief. "Unbelievable," I muttered. My mother-in-law had actually greased the floor, hoping I'd fall. Though she claimed to have cleaned the room, her true intention was to cause me harm. I was furious. If I had entered that room, I could have seriously injured myself. Breaking my leg would have been the least of my worries. Hitting my head could have been fatal. Her actions were borderline criminal. "You're despicable. You're not even family to me anymore," I shouted. "I could have been badly hurt because of you. I'm going to the police." But Brittany, desperate to deflect, retorted, "Wait a minute. I didn't directly cause harm, did I? Your wife was the one who told you to go into that room. So this is all her fault. Shut up. That's not the point. My husband snapped, dialing the police. As he struggled with the phone, my mother-in-law tried to grab it from him. Despite the pain from his broken leg, my husband clung to the phone, speaking urgently with the police. I was torn, wishing I could be anywhere but here, maybe even at work at the hospital, far from this chaos. I knew it wouldn't be long before the neighbors found out, especially since I had almost been hurt too. I considered calling the police myself, wondering if she might face charges for attempted assault. But as I voiced this, Brittany interrupted, "Wait, now I don't want the police involved." I was stunned by her casual response. "Really? You knew what could happen when you chose this path? Did you think you could just erase me from existence?" Brittany's indifferent reply shocked me further. I did hope it would be simpler if he just vanished. "Wow," I sneered. "You're downright criminal in your thinking. Personally, I wish they'd lock you away forever." That's when I made my decision. "That's it. Let's get a divorce." "What?" my husband exclaimed. "You can't be serious. After everything, you're just going to walk away?" "I can't live like this anymore," I replied firmly. "Your moral compass is so skewed. I can't bear it any longer." "Wait, please don't end our marriage over this," my husband pleaded. "I don't need you. I'm perfectly capable on my own," I said, my resolve unwavering. "I need you," he countered, desperation in his voice. "I was counting on your income. I even signed a contract for that Honda Century I've always wanted." "I don't care about that anymore," I said, cutting him off. I went to clean the grimy floor, hastily packed my things, and grabbed my wedding ring, setting it on the table. I then rummaged through a shelf full of old papers and found the divorce papers he'd prepared before, when he'd said we'd divorce if I couldn't have a child within 3 years. Well, I can't have children now. So thanks, but no thanks. With that, I sealed my decision, holding the divorce papers firmly in my hand. "Let's get this over with." My husband tried to argue, asking about the loan for his cherished car, but I wasn't interested. "Who cares?" I muttered, leaving him behind. I headed straight to the hospital, and when I arrived, the compassionate charge nurse seemed to understand immediately. She didn't need to ask many questions. She could tell that I had my reasons. Being a nurse, I knew I could support myself without relying on anyone else. As I thought about everything that had happened, I couldn't help but wonder why I tolerated poor treatment from my in-laws for so long. The entire situation seemed absurd now. I decided to focus solely on my work and leave the past behind. The next morning, I filed for divorce, and just like that, he became my ex-husband. Given all the emotional turmoil he had caused, I consulted a lawyer about seeking compensation. In the end, my ex was ordered to pay me, and I couldn't help but think, serves you right. The police involvement had made the neighbors avoid my mother-in-law. She had openly talked about how my ex-husband had broken his leg, casting her in a negative light. Everyone now saw her for what she was, a terrible parent. Eventually, my ex distanced himself from her and seemed to kick her out. She complained about her new life, lamenting how difficult it was to adjust to living alone on a minimal survivor's benefit. Our previous grocery bills had been outrageous, and she struggled to adapt. As for my ex, I lost all interest in what happened to him. He had taken me for granted and expected me to contribute financially, which had been a huge annoyance. Though he wasn't exactly wealthy, he still made impulsive decisions like taking out a loan for a new car, something I doubted he could even afford. 3 years later, I met a doctor from the hospital, and we started dating. After a year, we married, and a miracle happened. We were blessed with a child. Despite everything I had been through, I was finally living the life I had always deserved. From now on, I promised myself I would cherish each moment with my family and make the most of these new beginnings. I'm Delilah, and tonight, like most nights since arriving in Monte Carlo, I found myself sitting alone at a small cafe near the bustling casino square. It's a far cry from the extravagant life I was born into, but after graduating from a prestigious college in New York, I crave something simple, something real. My father owns what feels like half the world: luxury hotels, tech firms, you name it. Yet I chose to use my mother's last name, a way to keep my distance from the glare of his empire. The evening air was cooling when you walked in. Julian looked like he belonged here, moving with the kind of ease that only comes with a tailored suit that probably costs more than my monthly rent. Without asking, he pulled out the chair across from me and sat down. Mind if I join you? He asked, already making himself comfortable. I barely glanced up. Looks like you're already sitting, I replied coolly. He laughed, smooth and practiced. I'm Julian. And you are? Delilah? I met his gaze for a moment, sizing him up. He was polished, a little too perfect for my usual taste, but undeniably attractive. So, Delilah, he continued, leaning back, what brings someone like you here? Alone? Just enjoying my coffee, I answered vaguely, not in the mood to share. And you? He shrugged, a glint of amusement in his eyes. I could say business, but I'd be lying. Let's just say I'm here for something interesting, and it looks like I might found it. His gaze lingered, steady and confident. I raised an eyebrow. Hope the coffee lives up to your expectations then. He smiled, not breaking eye contact. Something tells me it already has. I wasn't here for a fling, and I didn't intend to entertain anyone's lines. Look, I'm not one of those girls who falls for charming strangers. If that's what you're after, you're wasting your time. Julian leaned back, an amused expression crossing his face. Who says I'm playing a game? Experience, I said bluntly. You sit down uninvited, drop a line. What, expect a number or a date? He chuckled, genuinely this time. You're tough. I like that. I'm not looking for a number, just a conversation. But if it's too much, just say the word and I'll disappear. I hesitated. Monte Carlo could be beautiful, but it was often lonely too. Conversation's fine, I said, keeping it casual. To my surprise, talking with Julian was easy. He didn't try to impress me with wealth or connections. He was comfortable, and as the evening wore on, I found myself genuinely enjoying his company. Eventually, as the night began to wind down, I stood to leave. Well, Julian, I said, this was unexpectedly pleasant. He grinned, catching my surprise. Surprised yourself, huh? Maybe just a little, I admitted. Good night, Julian. Good night, Delilah, he replied, his gaze lingering as I walked away. For the first time, the nights here didn't feel so solitary. In the following days, Julian seemed to appear wherever I was, as if drawn to the same places. Surprisingly, his persistence wasn't annoying. It was as if he truly enjoyed my company. One evening, he sat beside me on a quiet terrace overlooking the sea, bringing 3 coffees just in case he guessed wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll drink both, he joked, handing me a cup. Good guess, I replied with a smile. We settled into a comfortable rhythm, sharing stories about favorite movies, debating over the best James Bond he swore by Daniel Craig while I was a Sean Connery fan, and wandering through the local markets. Julian had a way of making me laugh, and each day Monte Carlo felt a little less like a stop on my journey and a little more like home. One afternoon, he suddenly turned serious. Delilah, I know I'm just some guy you met at a cafe, but these past weeks have been, I don't know, different, better, because of you. I stopped, not sure how to respond. Julian, I like spending time with you, I really do. But this is just a break for me. I'm not looking for complications. He nodded, his face softening. No pressure. Just, no, I'm here, okay. I think you're pretty amazing. Days turned into weeks, and my time in Monte Carlo was nearing its end. Julian and I had drifted into late-night dinners and early morning walks, something I never anticipated under the Mediterranean stars. Then one evening, Julian surprised me. Come back with me, he said, hope filling his voice. There's a position at my company back in the States. I know it's sudden, but I just think it could be great. The idea was insane, completely out of character for me, yet part of me was tempted by the adventure or the chance to see where this could lead. Just as I was considering the possibility, my father showed up unannounced, his laughter echoing through the room as he stepped into my space like he owned it. Well, Delilah, hiding out in plain sight, are we? He chuckled, enveloping me in a hug that left me breathless. Tell me about this decision. This guy must be something special for you to consider moving like this. I sighed, feeling the weight of everything pressing down. His name's Julian, and he doesn't know about all of this. I gestured around me, acknowledging the opulence I'd spent my life trying to keep hidden from the people who mattered. My dad's expression turned serious. You can't keep that a secret forever, Delilah. If he's going to be part of your life, he deserves to know who you really are. I know, Dad, I replied quietly. I just want to be sure about him before I complicate things. He ruffled my hair, a playful gesture that made me feel like a kid again. Just remember, if you ever need anything, I'm only a call away. And don't forget, I've got eyes everywhere, he added with a wink. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Julian and I grew closer, though he sensed I was holding back. One evening, as we sat down to dinner, he looked at me, his gaze gentle but insistent. "When do you think I'll get to meet your family?" he asked. "I feel like I'm missing a big part of you." My heart raced. I wasn't ready to reveal the truth, the tangled web of wealth and expectations that came with my last name. "Well, my mom passed away years ago, and my dad, he's just a regular guy," I said, dodging the details. Julian reached for my hand. "Whenever you're ready, I'd like to meet him. Family's important." For the first time, I began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, I was ready to share my world with him. Nodded, grateful for his understanding, even though I wasn't sure how I'd ever bridge the gap between Julian and my father. My dad's world was one I wasn't ready to introduce Julian to, not yet. As time went on, life with Julian flowed in ways I hadn't anticipated. We were blending our lives together effortlessly. My new job at his company was going smoothly, and our relationship was deepening every day. It felt like we were building towards something significant, though I didn't realize how big until the moment arrived. It was an ordinary evening in Julian's cozy, upscale apartment with a view of the city skyline. We had just finished a casual takeout dinner, lounging on the couch as a documentary about ocean life played softly in the background. Julian suddenly turned to me, his expression surprisingly serious. He took my hand, and my heart quickened. "Delilah," he began, his voice steady but tinged with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've been through, and what I want for our future together." I nodded, feeling my mouth go dry, waiting for him to continue. "I love you, Delilah," he said, his words warm and sincere. "I love everything about you, and I can't imagine my life without you." He paused, looking nervous, a vulnerability I hadn't expected, which made me feel a little braver. "I want to be with you, always. Will you marry me?" No grand gesture, no ring, just a simple, genuine question that was so unmistakably Julian. "Yes," I answered, the word rushing out of me, almost a sigh of relief. "Yes, I will." Julian's smile spread wide, and he pulled me into a tight hug. The rest of the evening was a blur of excitement and dreaming about our future together. It felt thrilling, a little overwhelming, but it was so undeniably right. The next challenge was telling my dad. I expected him to be happy, but his reaction was far more cautious than I hoped. "Delilah, you know I want nothing but your happiness," he said, his voice heavy with concern. "But are you sure about this? It's all happening so fast." "I'm sure, Dad. He's a great guy, you'll see." I tried to sound more confident than I felt. He sighed, his eyes searching mine. "All right, but promise me one thing." He paused. "A prenuptial agreement, just to be safe." The word didn't intimidate me. It was practical, especially given our situations. "Of course, Dad. We'll handle it." "That's good," he replied, adding after a pause, "But Delilah, I won't be at the wedding. I don't want to spoil your story of being a simple girl." Next, I met Julian's mother, whose reception was ice cold from the start. Over dinner at their family home, she looked at me with a chilling gaze. "Julian, are you sure about this girl?" she asked bluntly. "She doesn't seem like she's a fit for our family." Julian tried to smooth things over, but his mother was adamant. "A prenuptial agreement is non-negotiable," she said firmly. I nodded without hesitation, understanding that agreeing would ease some of the tension. "Absolutely. I wouldn't have it any other way." Later, we met with a lawyer to finalize the agreement. Despite these early challenges, our wedding in the Maldives was breathtaking. Standing beside Julian with the ocean waves lapping at the shore and sand under our feet, I felt a rush of hope. It felt like it was just the two of us, our love and a future we were ready to shape together. Settling into married life began beautifully. We moved into a spacious new house, meant to be the foundation of our dream life together. I threw myself back into work, determined to prove I was more than just the boss's wife. My role was challenging, but now, with new expectations, it felt even more significant. I wasn't just managing projects. I was part of decision-making, and Julian seemed proud, at first. But as my projects succeeded, bringing in significant profits and bolstering the company's reputation, I sensed a shift in Julian. At first, it was a passing remark, a subtle comment. Then one evening, over dinner, he brought it up. Delilah, you're doing great at work. Maybe too great, he said, not meeting my eyes. Confused, I looked at him. What do you mean? Isn't that good for the company? It is, he admitted, pushing his food around. But you know, the guys are starting to say it's becoming the Delilah show over there. I was taken aback. Isn't that a bit unfair? I thought you'd be happy with our success. I am, he replied, though he didn't sound it. But it's just a lot. Everyone's talking about you, how you handle things, and it makes me wonder where I stand. That conversation marked a turning point. Julian's once supportive attitude began to feel clouded with jealousy and resentment. I couldn't understand it. Wasn't he the one who'd encouraged me to step up? The tension only grew when his mother stayed with us, bringing the traditional mindset I'd never had to contend with. She would casually remark about my work, suggesting that a wife's place was more at home. You're always at the office, Delilah. When do you find time to care for your husband? She would say. I tried to ignore it, hoping to keep the peace, but her words added to the distance between Julian and me. One evening, Julian came home, his expression set and unreadable. Delilah, he said, his tone firm. I think it's best if you leave the company. We need to focus on our family, and it seems like your role there is just causing too much tension. His words felt like a punch. Leave the company? But why? I've worked so hard, Julian. It's for the best, he replied coldly. You can focus on the house now, maybe start that garden you've always talked about, he added dismissively, as if my career was a mere hobby. The next day, I found myself at a crossroads, uncertain if I should let go of everything I'd built, just to keep the peace in our fragile marriage. I discovered that Julian had fired our entire household staff, the housekeepers, cooks, and even the horticulturist. It's all on you now, he said, almost as if he were punishing me. You want to be more involved at home. Here's your chance. His words were harsh, and though I wasn't afraid of housework, the way he dumped this on me felt deeply unfair. This wasn't the loving, supportive man I had married. This was someone controlling and intolerant, a stranger. Adding to the tension, Julian's mother, who was staying with us, seemed to enjoy this turn of events. It's good for a wife to focus on her home, she would say, smile barely concealing a smirk whenever Julian talked about my new role as a full-time housewife. Each day, I tried to adjust, but a sense of shame grew within me, shame that I hadn't seen this coming, and a quiet, painful shame that maybe my father had been right about Julian all along. When Julian suggested a trip to Monte Carlo to rekindle our strained relationship, I felt hesitant yet hopeful. But that hope was quickly dashed when his mother announced she would be coming along. It's been ages since I traveled, she declared, her words leaving no room for disagreement. Julian welcomed her enthusiastically, without a single thought for my feelings. We rented a small house in Monte Carlo, charming but costly. What was meant to be a retreat quickly became a prison. From the moment we arrived, Julian and his mother treated the city as their playground, renting luxury cars, visiting exclusive boutiques, and dining at the finest restaurants. Meanwhile, I was left behind to manage the household, preparing meals and cleaning up after their daily excursions. They demanded home-cooked meals, turning me into a servant in our holiday home. As the days went by, Julian's mother's remarks became sharper, her barbs cloaked in smiles. Really, Delilah, living off someone else's dime. Must be quite the life, huh? She sneered, each word landing like a slap. Julian never defended me. Instead, he laughed along with her, and each chuckle felt like a betrayal, cracking the fragile remnants of our bond. One evening, as we passed a grand old hotel, Julian's mother looked at it with envy. Imagine owning a place like that, she muttered, her voice dripping with longing. Later that night, over dinner, she took another jab at me, this time loudly instructing the waiter, for Delilah, just the cheapest dish. No need to spoil her with luxuries she doesn't deserve. Julian laughed, agreeing, good call, Mom. Let's not go overboard. Their words stung. I stood up abruptly, the scrape of my chair loud against the marble floor. I won't stand for this anymore, I said, my voice trembling yet firm. I'm divorcing you, Julian. As I walked away, Julian and his mother followed, shouting insults that echoed through the night. Look at her, a beggar, unworthy of my son. His mother jeered. My heart pounded, but before I could escape, Julian caught up, grabbed my purse, and sneered. This is my money, Delilah. Get out however you can. With a violent yank, he tore the purse from my shoulder, leaving me stunned and shaken. His mother's cruel laughter followed as she added, "Maybe you'll learn to beg here in Monte Carlo." Just then, as their laughter echoed down the street, fate intervened. We stood in front of the grand hotel Julian's mother had envied earlier. The gates opened, and a guard approached, his expression lighting up as he recognized me. "Miss Harris," he called, his tone respectful. "Your father mentioned you might stop by. Please this way. The best room is always reserved for you." Julian and his mother froze, their smug expressions vanishing as they realized my connection to the hotel. His mother stammered, "Harris. As in billionaire Harris." Ignoring their shock, I walked toward the hotel with the guard, each step a quiet declaration of my independence. Julian's desperate voice called after me, "Please, Delilah, I didn't mean it." And his mother added with forced cheer, "Perhaps we could come in for a drink, at least?" Without a backward glance, I stepped inside, the heavy doors closing firmly behind me, symbolizing the end of my old life. Back in the US, I faced Julian in court. He tried to claim my bonuses from the multi-million-dollar deals I had closed at his company. But my attorney revealed every unpaid bonus, bringing to light Julian's betrayal in the business we'd built together. In the end, the court awarded me $7 million. Outside, Julian made one last desperate plea. "Delilah, everyone's laughing at me. Can we start over?" Once, those words might have stirred pity. Now, I saw clearly. "You only missed the money, Julian," I said, my voice firm. "Maybe next time, you'll think twice about whom you listen to." Without waiting for a response, I walked away, my heels clicking on the courthouse steps, each step a testament to my strength. Back home, my father was waiting. The silence between us felt heavy, filled with the words I'd kept to myself. Finally, I spoke. "Dad, I should have listened to you." He wrapped me in a warm embrace, his voice gentle. "You had to learn for yourself. Now you know, and that's what matters." Late into the night, we talked about mistakes, lessons, and new beginnings. Inspired, I began planning my next chapter. With the skills I'd gained and the resources I now had, I started my own business. The journey was challenging, but each step confirmed that I was on the right path. Sitting in my new office, looking over the bustling city, I realized how far I had come, from a trapped wife in a broken marriage to a confident businesswoman. Every hardship had made me stronger, and now, the future was mine to shape. Sprawled on the cold kitchen tiles, I clutched my abdomen, the sharp pain radiating through me as though a blade had twisted deep inside. My breath came in shallow gasps as the agony intensified. Catherine, my young daughter, stood nearby, her face etched with concern. "Mommy, are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Through gritted teeth, I forced a calm tone. "I'll be fine, sweetheart. It's just a bad stomach ache," I lied, trying to shield her from the severity of my condition. Footsteps approached, and my husband, Willie, appeared in the doorway. His expression was more annoyed than concerned as he looked at me, suitcase in hand. "What's happening, Amy? Why are you on the floor?" His voice was edged with irritation, not alarm. "I think it's appendicitis, Willie. It's really severe. We need to go to the hospital," I gasped, each word punctuated by waves of pain. He scoffed dismissively. "Appendicitis? You're probably just overreacting. It's probably just indigestion." I tried to argue, but a sharp stab of pain silenced me. Willie glanced at his watch, impatience flickering in his eyes. "I can't miss this trip with Carol. Just call a taxi or something," he said, waving his hand dismissively. My disbelief grew as I tried to speak again. "Willie, I can't even move. Catherine's here. I need you," I pleaded, my voice heavy with desperation. He shook his head, unmoved. "It's probably nothing. Call if it gets worse," he said curtly before turning to leave, his suitcase trailing behind him. I lay there, pain racking my body, with only Catherine's small hands in mine for comfort. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Mommy, don't be sick. You have to be okay," she sobbed. Gathering the remnants of my strength, I pulled her close. "I'm here, darling. Mommy's here." With Willie gone, urgency gripped me. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone and dialed the one person I knew would come. My brother Russell. The phone rang, slicing through the silence of the kitchen. "Hello." Russell's voice was a beacon of hope. "Russell, it's Amy. I need help. I think it's appendicitis. I can't move." I rushed out, each word a struggle against the pain. "Catherine is scared," I managed to add, my voice breaking. After a brief silence, Russell's calm and reassuring voice came through the phone. "I'm on my way, Amy. Hold tight, I'll be there soon." Resting on the cold tiles, I closed my eyes, trying to withstand the sharp pain that coursed through me. Catherine stayed close, her small presence a slight comfort amidst the chaos. In that moment, a resolute feeling took root inside me. Willie's neglect in such a critical time was not just hurtful, it was a profound betrayal. Something had shifted, and I knew things were bound to change. Later, in the sterile hospital room, the rhythmic beeping of machines became a strange comfort. The surgery to remove my inflamed appendix had been successful, but the emotional wound Willie had inflicted lingered. I had called my parents to look after Catherine while I recuperated, and their voices brimmed with concern. The unasked questions about Willie's absence hung heavy in the air. 2 days later, I returned home, the physical pain now a dull ache, a faint echo of what had transpired. Catherine's joy at seeing me again was a bright spot. "Mommy, you're back. Are you all better now?" Her innocent question warmed my heart. "I'm getting there, sweetie," I replied, pulling her into a tight embrace, grateful for her comforting presence. But our peaceful reunion was short-lived. The next day, the doors slammed open, and Willie and his sister Carol burst in, frustration in their voices. "Why didn't you pick us up yesterday? We had to pay extra for a taxi and train fares." Willie's accusatory tone filled the room as he strode into the living room. A surge of anger welled up inside me. "Welcome back. Must have been quite a journey," I responded coldly, meeting his gaze. Willie stopped, taken aback by my frosty reception. Even Carol seemed surprised by the palpable tension. "What's with the attitude, Amy?" Willie demanded. I couldn't hold back any longer. "While you were enjoying your trip, I was in the hospital," I said, my voice calm but charged with anger. I glared at Willie and his sister, whose demands often pulled him away from his family responsibilities. Carol's face turned red and Willie looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? You're fine, right?" he asked dismissively. "It's not just about being okay, Willie. It's about being there when your family needs you," I retorted, my frustration reaching its peak. Before Willie could respond, the door swung open, revealing Russell, our parents, and Willie's parents. Their eyes, filled with varying shades of anger and disappointment, were fixed on Willie and Carol. Willie's voice trembled as he asked, "Why is everyone here?" His usual confidence had faded under their intense scrutiny. Taking a deep breath, I realized that this moment, this confrontation, would be the turning point for everything that followed. I gathered every ounce of strength I had left to express the hurt and betrayal that had built up inside me. "Willie, you left Catherine and me alone when we needed you the most," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I was in the hospital, and you weren't there." I had shared everything with our families, and as I spoke, Willie seemed to shrink before my eyes. His usual bravado was gone, and his gaze flitted around the room, searching for an ally, but finding none. "It's not just about this incident, Willie," I continued. "It's about all the times you've put Carol before your own family." Russell, his disappointment clear, added his voice to the confrontation. "You've been neglecting Amy and Catherine for far too long." Carol, once so confident, now shifted uncomfortably. Her eyes bounced between the floor and the upset faces around her usual arrogance faltering. Willie scrambled to defend himself, offering excuses and justifications, but the room was thick with tension. I could feel it. This was a pivotal moment. I realized then that I could no longer live in the shadow of Willie's neglect. It was time for a change. It was time to stand up for myself and protect Catherine. The meeting ended without resolution, but for me, it marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would no longer tolerate being overlooked. The message from that day was clear. I had the support of our families, and Willie's indifference had finally crumbled. As our relatives filed out, his parents gave me sympathetic looks, an unspoken admission of their son's shortcomings. That night, as I lay in bed, the day's confrontations replayed in my mind. Anger, disappointment, but also something new, a growing sense of empowerment. Willie's true colors had been revealed, and I knew it was time for me to take control of my own life. The following days were filled with tension. The silence between us was heavy, and though Willie tried to act as if everything was normal, the air was thick with unresolved emotions. During this time, I reflected on the deep unhappiness I had been carrying for so long. The decision I was edging towards wasn't easy, but it felt necessary, like taking a long overdue breath of fresh air after suffocating for too long. One evening, while Willie casually flipped through TV channels, I approached him, a folder in my hand. My heart pounded, but my resolve was unshakable. "Willie, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. He glanced up, irritation crossing his face. "What now, Amy?" he asked, dismissively. Taking a deep breath, I handed him the folder. "I want a divorce," I said, each word final and unyielding. "I want a divorce," I declared, my voice steady, though my heart raced. Willie stared at me, disbelief flickering across his face before it was replaced with scorn. "Divorce? That's absurd, Amy," he retorted, a mocking edge in his tone. "You're blowing this all out of proportion." I shook my head, a surge of empowerment rushing through me. "It's not an exaggeration," I replied. "I've thought long and hard about this. You've consistently put Carol before me and Catherine. I can't keep living like this." Willie's sneer deepened, his voice dripping with condescension. "You think you can manage on your own? Don't be naive, Amy." His words were meant to wound, but I stood my ground, my voice unwavering. "I'm not naive, Willie. I know what this means, but I'd rather face the uncertainty than keep feeling invisible in my own marriage." He laughed bitterly, the sound cold and harsh, echoing in the tense air. "Good luck, Amy. You'll regret this when you realize how tough it is out there." His dismissive tone only fueled my resolve. I felt my anger rise, not just at his words, but at the years of being sidelined, of feeling like I didn't matter. This moment, though fraught with challenges, was a new beginning for me, a step toward reclaiming my life, my worth. I kept my composure, my voice steady. "This is my decision, and I'm sticking to it." For a moment, I thought he might argue further, but instead, he just shrugged, a smug smirk spreading across his face. "Fine, have it your way. But remember, I warned you," he said dismissively, turning his attention back to the TV, ignoring me once again. In the midst of the whirlwind of emotions, fear was present, but it was overwhelmed by a deep sense of liberation. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally taking charge of my own life, stepping out of the shadows. The next day, I began the legal process for the divorce. The paperwork, the procedures, they were daunting, but my resolve was firm. My parents and my brother Russell offered unwavering support, helping me navigate the process with encouragement and guidance. Willie's true nature became more apparent as the divorce unfolded. He was dismissive, uncooperative, and tried to intimidate me into backing down. But I stood my ground, bolstered by my family's support and my own growing sense of empowerment. As time passed, the cracks in Willie's facade grew wider. The charming, confident man I had once married revealed himself to be selfish and manipulative. His true self was exposed for all to see, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. The divorce proceedings were grueling, with Willie's constant attempts to belittle and undermine me. In our meetings, he sneered at my parenting, mocked my future without him. But instead of breaking me, his words only fueled my determination. "Enjoy your struggles, Amy," he taunted during one of our final meetings. "You'll soon see how good you had it with me." His arrogance was infuriating, but I remained composed. I'd rather face challenges every day than spend another moment with someone who has so little regard for his family, I replied firmly. Willie's smug demeanor faltered for a split second, replaced by a flicker of anger, but he quickly masked it with a scoff. I knew then that my resolve had struck a nerve. I was moving forward, no longer tethered to his disdain. When the divorce was finalized, I felt a peculiar mix of relief and anxiety. I was free from Willie, but the path ahead felt daunting. Yet, as I stepped out of the courthouse, a wave of liberation swept through me, revitalizing my spirit. In the weeks that followed, Willie's life began to unravel. His neglectful behavior during our marriage and the news of our separation became hot topics at his workplace. Those who had once admired him now looked at him with pity and disdain. His charming facade had shattered, revealing the pettiness and selfishness beneath the surface. The news of our divorce spread quickly through our community, thanks in part to my well-connected cousin. Willie, who had always been deeply concerned about his image, suddenly found himself the subject of whispered conversations and judgmental glances. Carol, too, was not spared from scrutiny. Her involvement in our marital issues became widely known, and people began to view her with suspicion and disapproval. The once solid bond she shared with Willie now seemed strained and uncomfortable. One evening, as I picked up Catherine from school, I overheard a fierce argument between Willie and Carol outside their house, their voices thick with anger and resentment. It's your fault we're in this mess, Willie shouted, his frustration palpable. Carol's reply was just as sharp, her voice laden with fury. How dare you blame me? You're the one who couldn't keep your family together. Their public quarrel stood in stark contrast to the image of unity they once projected. The cracks in their relationship had deepened, and now they were reaping the consequences of their selfish choices. As I walked away with Catherine, a sense of vindication washed over me. It was clear. Willie and Carol were now facing the fallout of their actions, and it felt like a bitter yet deserved lesson. That night, as Catherine slept soundly in her room, I stood by the window, lost in thought. The past few months had been an emotional roller coaster, but they had ultimately led me to a place of strength and self-respect. I had fought for my dignity and for Catherine's future. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I felt ready to face it with newfound confidence. In the aftermath of the divorce, life began to settle into a quieter, yet more fulfilling rhythm. The weight of my unhappy marriage had been lifted, and in its place, I found the freedom to rebuild my life. Step by step, with Catherine by my side, I began the process of starting over. Finding a job was my first priority. The gap in my resume due to years spent focused on motherhood was a challenge, but I remained determined. After several interviews, I secured a position at a small accounting firm. The firm, led by a supportive woman who understood the demands of motherhood, offered a flexible and accommodating work environment, a perfect fit for me. Catherine adapted to her new life with surprising resilience. She thrived in kindergarten, making new friends and eagerly diving into her studies. Her laughter and enthusiasm brought a warmth and joy to our home, a welcome change from the tense atmosphere that had once clouded it. Still, there were moments when the ghosts of my past with Willie resurfaced. One afternoon, while dropping Catherine off at school, I overheard a group of parents gossiping. That's her, Amy. Her husband left her because he couldn't stand being around her anymore, one of them said. Their words stung, but I held my head high. The gossip and judgment felt like small prices to pay for the peace and freedom I now had. Meanwhile, Willie's life continued to unravel. His pride had taken a hit, and his once pristine reputation was now tarnished. I learned through mutual acquaintances that he had moved back in with his parents, a detail he tried desperately to keep secret. His fall from grace was unmistakable. Eventually, news of Willie's return to his parents' home spread, as did Carol's deteriorating situation. Her involvement in our marriage had alienated many of her friends, and her relationship with Willie was now a shell of what it once was. They barely spoke, their connection strained by blame and regret. For me, the support of my family became my anchor. My brother Russell had moved closer, providing unwavering strength. My parents showered Catherine with love, helping to heal the wounds of the past. One day, while sipping coffee in my kitchen, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. The pain, the struggle, and ultimately the liberation, it had all led to this moment of tranquility. I hadn't just survived, I had emerged stronger and more self-assured. My reverie was interrupted by the doorbell. When I opened the door, I was surprised to find Willie standing there. The look on his face was one of defeat. Amy, I'm sorry. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone, he said, his voice heavy with remorse. His apology, though belated, validated everything I had done. I took a deep breath, offering a quiet response. Thank you, Willie, but it's too late. I've moved on. As I closed the door behind him, a profound sense of closure enveloped me. That chapter of my life was over. A new one was beginning, and this time, I was the one writing the story. From the living room, I heard Catherine's voice, full of energy and life. A smile spread across my face as I walked toward her. The future was open before us, brimming with hope and possibility.